of work. Employees, interns, job seekers, volunteers, migrants, and persons with employers to choose. No one should have to choose between their right to work and their physical, mental, and sexual integrity and dignity. To become a reality for all workers, the C190 needs to be translated into national laws and policies that prevent and address violence and harassment in all work-related situations. That's why the ILO is calling on countries to ratify the convention. Get involved! Call on your country to ratify and implement C190. Raise your voice against any form of violence and harassment at work. We can turn this vision into reality and make work safe for everyone, everywhere. in 2019 at the International Labour Conference. So far, over 10 countries have ratified the convention. Everybody in the world of work, employees, interns, job seekers, volunteers, migrants, and persons with employers to choose. No one should have to choose between their right to work and their physical, mental, and sexual integrity and dignity. To become a reality for all workers, the C-190 needs to be translated into national laws and policies that prevent and address violence and harassment in all work-related situations. That's why the ILO is calling on countries to ratify the convention. Get involved! Call on your country to ratify and implement C-190. Raise your voice against any form of violence and harassment at work. We can turn this vision into reality and make work safe for everyone, everywhere.
in welcoming our guests and participants, both physically and online, to this forum on a very important forum on violence and harassment in the world of work. Let me acknowledge our partners, our representatives from the partner institutions, Director Gerard Go of the Commission on Human Rights, our Ms. Rebecca Bailosis of the Philippine Commission on Women. There is a story about the Philippine Commission on Women. It used to be the National Commission on the Role of Women, which was set up in the mid-1990s, if I'm not mistaken. And it was made up of several agencies, including the Department of Labor and Employment. Maybe at the time, the attitude was still to say that if you are constituting a commission or a council on women, everybody should be a woman in that commission. Fortunately or unfortunately, the Department of Labor and Employment designated me to sit there. So they made me an honorary woman as well. So that was in the old days. Also, let me recognize our old colleague, old in the sense that long-time colleague, Nenette Fernando, of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines. Muntik na kitang hindi makilala. And also Ms. Fidelina Heraldes of the United Domestic Workers of the Philippines. Good morning. Our colleagues and fellow officers and employees of the Department of Labor and Employment. Let me express our appreciation for all of you, for joining this forum today. The objectives of this I am told by Executive Director Jing that this forum has three objectives. The first, of course, is to look at concrete policies and programs to support the implementation of Convention 190, the Convention on Violence and Harassment in the World of Work. The second is to increase the network of advocates against violence and harassment. And the third is to raise awareness and understanding among all stakeholders in relation to the need to eliminate harassment and violence in the world of work. In this regard, let me acknowledge the important role of our partners, CHR, PCW, the employers sector, the labor sector, and all other stakeholders who might be online participating today. We are all in this together. The C-190 was actually the convention was formulated sometime in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, by the ILO. And we were one of the first countries to attempt to ratify the convention. I had the privilege of depositing the instrument in Geneva last June, the ratification instrument. So I would like to take this opportunity to repeat what I said when I deposited the document in at the International Labor Organization in Geneva. After 4 years of passionate advocacy and multi-stakeholder consultations spanning two presidencies, Convention 190 was finally ratified by President Ferdinand R. Marcos last October, and Senate concurrence to the ratification was secured last December. It has been 75 years since the Philippines became a member state of the ILO in 1948. Over the years, the relationship between our country and the ILO, as well as all its tripartite constituents, has been marked by fruitful and productive collaboration in our common pursuit of decent work and social justice. ILO Convention 190 is the 39th convention that the country has ratified, including 9 of the 10 fundamental conventions and all 8 of the original core conventions. With the addition of Convention 190, 32 of these conventions are currently in force. I would like to clarify that we are not that we are the first ASEAN country to have ratified the convention. ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. There is a bit of a debate whether we are the first Asian country to have done that, because Fiji and Australia did it first or did it ahead of us, and there is a debate whether Fiji and Australia is part of Asia because they are part of Asia Pacific. So let us be content with being the first ASEAN country to have ratified that. But then again, this is not a race. This is not a race. It's a question of commitment to what we have ratified that matters. We consider it, I deposited this on 20 February 2024. That is the World Day of Social Justice. So this is why I said this. We consider it auspicious to deposit the instrument of ratification today, 20 February 2024, as we celebrate the World Day of Social Justice. In addition to that, of course, to make it more current, let me also recognize the significance of the ratification of the deposit of Convention 190 ahead of the Women's Month, which is today, which is this month. This event may look simple, but it symbolizes several policy initiatives and milestones on labor and employment in the Philippines that the Philippines has achieved, particularly over the last 22 months. Starting in July 2022, the Philippines shifted to a more constructive engagement with the social partners, concerned government agencies, and the ILO on long-standing issues which the government has been called upon to address relative to the application of Convention 87. A roadmap on enhancing the promotion and protection of freedom of association and the workers' right to organize is now in place and is currently being implemented. In March last year, the government also adopted the Social Protection Floor Framework with the expectation of bringing about a more cohesive, inclusive, equitable, and effective social protection regime in the country. In September, the Philippine Congress passed the Trabajo para sa Bayan Act, or JOBS Act, which adopts a whole-of-nation approach in inspiring job creation within the domestic economy. Last March 12, the implementing rules of the Trabajo para sa Bayan Act was finally signed, and we are looking forward to have a National Employment Summit after Labor Day. I think it is scheduled for May 3 and 4. The countries in October, with ILO support, for which we are extremely grateful, the country's tripartite constituents adopted the Philippine Labor and Employment Plan for 2023-2028, which is a major component of the Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028. This will serve as our medium-term roadmap in promoting employment and equal opportunity and access to employment opportunities, respect for rights at work, and inclusive social protection. For the entire year of 2023, the Philippines continued its strong recovery from the pandemic with an annual average GDP growth of 5.6%. We ended the year with unemployment down to 3.8%, although we also recognize that much remains to be done in the area of improving quality of employment. Shortly thereafter, the Philippine Senate gave its concurrence to Convention 190. The government was also honored to accept the invitation of the Director General of the ILO to join the Global Coalition of Social Justice. The government is looking forward to meaningfully contributing to the success of the coalition, and definitely the implementation of Convention 190 in our country will be a very important part of our contributions to the coalition. Beyond the formal act of depositing the ratification instrument, are the country's continuing and sustained efforts in demonstrating its commitment to international labor standards, both in law and in practice, and its solidarity with the tripartite constituents worldwide in the conviction that coordinated international and national action, are critical in attaining decent work and lasting social peace and justice. In relation to Convention 190, the Philippines will not be starting from a blank slate in implementing the convention. Many of its principles are already incorporated and operationalized in several specific national laws, such as the Labor Code, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, the Magna Carta of Women, and more recently, the Philippine Safe Spaces Act. Nevertheless, the Philippines recognizes that as the first international instrument to institutionalize what we call the right to a world of work free from violence and harassment as a specific right, Convention 190 breaks new ground in the boldness of its scope and ambition. Where it speaks of a right in the world of work, it transcends the traditional boundaries of physical spaces, territory and geography, of formal and informal work arrangements, of urban and rural communities, and even of corporate halls and households. It embraces a world that is expanded by technology and at the same time brought tighter by it, and where very often men and women find their work, their family and social lives, and all other affairs of ordinary life increasingly fused and intertwined. Above all this, the convention ultimately calls upon us to agree on a baseline of acceptable behavior that respects every worker equally as a human being, who has full freedom to choose and pursue the things that society values, whatever his or her status, capabilities, and sector are. For the Philippine government, we envision that there will be challenges in implementing the convention. First is the translation of the scope of the convention from the conceptual right to a world of work free from violence and harassment, which the convention embodies, to the operational right to world of work, which member states should shape in relation to circumstances at the national level. In this regard, let me just emphasize that the ratification of the convention should not end there. There are other things, there are many things that we need to do, including adjustments in our legislations that the tripartite partners should work on. The second is the enhancement of institutions to put into effect the concept, which may require adjustments in national laws and implementing mechanisms. The third is the buy-in from employers, particularly employers, which the convention identifies as primarily responsible to ensure that their workplaces, whether physical or virtual, are indeed free from violence and harassment. In this regard, we consider the employers as the duty bearer in implementing the principles embodied in the convention. Of course, the state is equally a duty bearer in ensuring that the convention is followed, but very importantly, the role of the employers uh, cannot be underestimated. And fourth is the promotion, adoption, administration, and enforcement of laws and programs against violence. As we have deposited the instrument, we have given assurance to the international community and our tripartite constituents that the government, particularly the Department of Labor and Employment, is prepared to address these four challenges as its priority course of action. The government employed the process of social dialogue and tripartism in mastering consensus to ratify the convention. We will continue to use the same process in seeing to it that the convention will be fully implemented as soon as can be reasonably possible. Let me go back to the objectives of this workshop, because I think what you want to do is to move forward. I would suggest for this forum to take into account certain practical considerations. One of which is, so how do we implement this convention on the ground now that we have it? I think information, advocacy, and education to promote common understanding is very, very important. And we can take advantage of fora like this to achieve that objective. We also have to open other avenues or wider avenues for advocacy, information, and education. Traditionally, we look at workplaces, of course, but we have to look at the schools. We also have to look at the existing mechanisms that are at our disposal, including the tripartite industrial peace councils at the national and the regional level. Then again, we also need to integrate, as far as DOLE is concerned, the principles or measures that address or that prevent violence and harassment in the workplace through our programs. We have such mechanisms, or we have such programs as labor education. I think that needs to be a regular topic in our labor education courses, basic labor education courses. We have our public employment service offices. I think we need to empower the public employment service offices to be our partners in promoting awareness and respect for the principles embodied in the convention. We have the job start of the Department of Labor and Employment, where beneficiaries of the program undergo a life skills training at the outset, 10-day life skills training, and probably we can incorporate a topic in that segment of their training, of their engagement on Convention 190 and the concept of or the urgency of needing to of preventing harassment and violence in the workplace. We have at the final stages the crafting of the implementing rules of the Labor Education Act of 2019 or 2018. As you are aware, there is a Labor Education Act which makes labor education an elective course in higher education institutions, as well as technical and vocational education institutions. At this point, discussions are underway on what topics ought to be included in these elective courses. And the Department of Labor and Employment will be positioning, hopefully with the support of the tripartite partners, to include anti-sexual harassment, anti-harassment and anti-violence in the workplace in among the topics in the labor education courses. So there are a lot of avenues for uh, points of entry by which we can promote common understanding and full respect, eventually full respect to the principles embodied in the convention, even without a law, even without a law. Now there is also another practical thing that we can do at the workplace level. If you remember, we have uh, a policy on policy against illegal drugs in the workplace. Why not a policy against violence and harassment in the workplace? I know that this is already incorporated in, or sort of incorporated in our CODIS, but perhaps we can emphasize more of that by having a distinct policy against workplace harassment and violence. And it's also very, very important to have a reporting mechanism in the workplace. Itong issue ng harassment and violence in the workplace is an issue that need not be discussed once it is committed against a particular employee. It need not be discussed openly. We have to assure confidentiality in the handling of reported incidents. But first of all, let us have that reporting mechanism. I do not know how many employers have that. I know that there are some multinationals who have set up reporting mechanisms. They have a line. They have a helpline to report incidents of this nature, and they also have corresponding policies to safeguard the privacy and protect the person against the complaining person against undue exposure. I think these are practical things that we can look at, and probably I'm thinking that one of these days we should propose such a policy to be adopted by the National Tripartite Industrial Peace Council, even in the absence of a law, which we can then use to advocate the promotion of the principles against harassment and violence in the workplace. So these are practical things. We need not start with very, very big ambitions. Convention 190, as I've said earlier, is ambitious in itself. But that ambition should start, or the attainment of that ambition should start with small and incremental steps. If we are committed to do that, then probably we will be able to meet the challenge of implementing fully the principles of this convention. So thank you very much and good morning.
Then request everyone to have a quick photo op for
C190 stands for the International Labour Organization Convention 190. The C190 is the first international treaty that aims to stop violence and harassment in the world of work. It was adopted by workers, employers, and governments in 2019 at the International Labour Conference. So far, over 10 countries have ratified the convention. The C190 protects everybody in the world of work: employees, interns, job seekers, volunteers, migrants, and persons with employers to choose. No one should have to choose between their right to work and their physical, mental, and sexual integrity and dignity. To become a reality for all workers, the C190 needs to be translated into national laws and policies that prevent and address violence and harassment in all work-related situations. That's why the ILO is calling on countries to ratify the convention. Get involved! Call on your country to ratify and implement C190. Raise your voice against any form of violence and harassment at work. We can turn this vision into reality and make work safe for everyone, everywhere. C190 stands for the International Labour Organization Convention 190. The C190 is the first international treaty that aims to stop violence and harassment in the world of work. It was adopted by workers, employers, and governments in 2019 at the International Labour Conference. So far, over 10 countries have ratified. The C190 protects everybody in the world of work: employees, interns, job seekers, volunteers, migrants, and persons with employers to choose. No
On December 21, 1974, Presidential Decree No. 620 created the Institute of Labor and Manpower Studies, which oversaw the policy and human resources function of the Department of Labor and Employment by providing the then Ministry of Labor and Employment with technical support in policy making and program implementation. Following the EDSA People Power Revolution, the Institute for Labor and Manpower Studies was abolished by virtue of Executive Order No. 126 by then-President Corazon C. Aquino on January 31, 1987. Its research and publications functions were absorbed by the newly created Center for Labor Studies. On July 25, 1987, Executive Order 251 was released, amending EO 126, which elevated the status of the Center for Labor Studies into what is now known as the Institute for Labor Studies. The new status gave the Institute flexibility in responding to the department's need for comprehensive and innovative researches in support of policy decision-making. Barely 2 years after the 1987 Dole-wide reorganization, ILS has made its mark as the department's think tank. The Institute undertook a study on the effectiveness of the department's policies and programs through an evaluation of the regional tripartite consultations, which the Dole established in 1987 in support of the national policy of consultation-based decision-making. Inspired by its vision of becoming the leading institution in labor and employment research and advocacy, ILS continues its commitment to promote good governance through the delivery of innovative, responsible, competent, and cutting-edge research and technical services along the full breadth of policy development process in the Department of Labor and Employment. It is our mission to deliver innovative, relevant, and responsive knowledge products and services on labor and employment through meaningful collaboration and cooperation towards promoting evidence-based policymaking. The Institute for Labor Studies is guided by its core values: integrity, excellence, public service, innovation, compassion. Behind each and every research is a group of keen, talented, and inquisitive civil servants with fresh insights in advocating for the creation of labor policies. These key ILS professionals continue to ensure that the ILS legacy of promoting evidence-based decision-making is evident in each and every study for recommendation and in all research collaborations conducted with all our stakeholders. The ILS has produced more than 500 researches and provided policy recommendations for more than 1,000 legislative bills, which were instrumental in providing guidance in crafting more than 300 laws, administrative, and department orders. The Institute for Labor Studies continues its legacy of being the premier research institute responsive to the needs of the Filipino workforce by providing policy recommendations through research and evidence-based decision-making. We shall realize this by continuously providing opportunities for our people who are at the heart of our work.
In 2018 and 2023, the Dole was conferred with the Gantimpala Bronze Award and the Gantimpala Silver Award by the Philippine Commission on Women. This award encapsulates the Dole's primary objective of mainstreaming GAD across its many programs, covering employment facilitation, labor standards and regulations, and social protection, which will allow women increased access to employment, protection at place of work, and provide social protection programs in order to cope with risks and contingencies arising out of a crisis. The department has taken significant strides in policy development, program identification and rollout, supporting and advocating for the continued upliftment of the working lives of every Filipino women worker. This is a clear message of the important role that they play in the labor market and overall Philippine economic Development Plan 2023 to 2028 is a plan for deep economic and social transformation to reinvigorate job creation and accelerate poverty reduction by steering the economy back on a high-growth path. This growth must be inclusive, building an environment that provides equal opportunities to all Filipinos and equipping them with skills to participate fully in an innovative and globally competitive economy. Using the PDP sub-theme of transformation or pagbabago, the Dole GAD agenda as a companion to the Dole Labor and Employment Plan 2023 to 2028 hopes to provide a gender lens in all Dole policies, programs, and activities to guarantee the inclusivity of all actionable deliverables of the department, leading to an empowered labor force regardless of one's gender.
As early as 2022, the department has started the initial groundwork in developing the agenda. Capacity building and orientation exercises were initiated in order to understand the gender issues of stakeholders, as well as to identify needed enabling laws to mainstream GAD into dollar policies and programs. However, only under the current DOLE leadership did it create a renewed sense of purpose on the need to intensify and mainstream GAD in the department. As such, is anchored on the same belief that inclusivity is central in achieving full, decent, productive, and remunerative employment for all Filipino workers. From 2023 up to the present, the DOLE GAD Focal Point System has undertaken and carried out the instructions of the DOLE GAD Executive Committee to initiate activities to develop a DOLE GAD agenda for 2024 to 2028 that is aligned with the principles, strategies, outcomes, and targets of the Labor and Employment Plan 2023 to 2028. The DOLE GAD agenda is a two-part series. The first part involves the department and stakeholders working together with the intention of incorporating GAD agenda that is both outward and inward-looking. This will ensure that the department's actions will not reinforce existing gender inequalities but will mainstream gender-inclusive considerations in its policies, programs, projects, and activities. As a working and living document, the agenda will allow the department to have a firm understanding of what needs to be done and identify the indicators in order to measure if the same has been accomplished. It aims to provide guidance in the implementation of policies, programs, activities, and initiatives that will ensure that GAD is mainstreamed along the outcomes and strategies spelled out in the Labor and Employment Plan 2023 to 2028 and the organizational analysis conducted by the DOLE GFPS.
The GAD agenda has incorporated into its framework the 3 Labor and Employment Plan priority pillars and identified gender issues to be addressed. An additional priority pillar was added into the agenda to improve the organizational capacities of the department as a government institution that champions gender and development. All DOLE offices, including its regional counterparts and attached agencies, have respectively integrated annual targets and budgets from 2024 to 2028 to identify priority areas and gender issues. Regular monitoring and evaluation activities shall be made by the DOLE GFPS to track the progress of this agenda and adjust the same when deemed needed or as requested by our stakeholders.
Recently, the Philippines has ratified ILO Convention No. 190 or the Violence and Harassment Convention of 2019, the ILO C-190, and its accompanying Recommendation No. 206 are the first international instruments to recognize the rights of all workers, whether in the formal or informal settings, regardless of classification and irrespective of employment status, to a world of work free from violence and harassment.
For 2024, the DOLE intends to undertake area-wide consultations and orientations with the stakeholders identified by the convention. These consultations will help the department identify areas for action and improve the country's readiness in developing and enforcing enabling laws that will enact the principles of ILO C-190. Emerging gender issues and priorities will be incorporated in the DOLE GAD agenda. Rest assured that the DOLE family will continue to work on mainstreaming gender and development, placing high priority on policies, programs, and projects that are deemed gender responsive. A commitment towards a bagong Pilipinas for every well-deserving Filipino worker to enjoy a matatag, maginhawa, at panatag na buhay!
We will be starting in a few minutes, but before that, we would like to show you an audiovisual presentation about ILO Convention 190. And this is made by the Advocacy and Publications Division of the Institute for Labor Studies. So let's just sit back and enjoy watching this AVP.
Nito lamang ika-20 ng Pebrero 2024, formal na pinagtibay ng Republika ng Pilipinas ang pagratipika ng International Labor Organization Violence and Harassment Convention 2019 o mas kilala bilang C-190, ang unang internasyonal na kumbensyon na naglalayong wakasan ng anumang uri ng karahasan at pang-aabuso sa mundo ng paggawa. Binibigyang proteksyon nito ang lahat ng mga manggagawa, kabilang ang mga interns, apprentices at ang mga employer na may tungkulin o otoridad. Layunin nito na alisin ang karahasan at pang-aabuso sa trabaho o anumang aktibidad na may kaugnayan dito. Sa opisina man o sa lugar na kanilang pinagtatrabahuan, habang nasa trabaho, biyahe tungo o mula sa trabaho o sa pagkuha ng mga exams o pagsasanay, protektado ang lahat, kahit saan sa loob ng C-190. Pati sa pampubliko at pribadong lugar, habang break time o bio break, basta pasok ito sa kanyang working hours kung saan bayad ng isang empleyado o manggagawa, sakop ito ng C-190. Pasok rin dito ang mga work-related trips, events o mga social activities, pati na rin ang mga gawain na may kaugnayan sa Information and Communications Technology o ICT tulad ng email, chat at iba pa. Ang Pilipinas ang unang bansa sa Asia na nangampanya at nagpatibay sa C-190. Inaprubahan ito ng Senado noong 11 ng Disyembre 2023 at sa pagdeposit ng Pilipinas ng Instrument of Ratification sa Geneva, Switzerland, tiisa ang Pilipinas sa 38 bansa sa buong mundo na nag-ratify ng C-190. Kinikilala ng C-190 ang karahasan at pang-aabuso bilang pag-uugali, gawain o banta na naglalayon, nagdudulot o maaring maging sanhi ng pinsala na pisikal, psikolohikal, sexual o ekonomiko. Pinaigting ito ng COVID-19 pandemic dahil sa papataas na panganib dulot ng karahasan at pang-aabuso sa panahon ng krisis. Ayon sa pag-aaral ng Institute for Labor Studies noong 2019, wala pang malinaw at konkretong definisyon ang pang-aabuso at karahasan sa mundo ng paggawa sa Pilipinas. Hindi pa rin ganun kalawak ang pag-unawa ng karamihan dito at limitado lamang sa mga may employer-employee relationship ang mga work-related policies patungkol sa violence and harassment. Ang C-190 ay may panawagan na palakasin ang mga estratehiya at panukala para maiwasan na anumang uri ng karahasan at pang-aabuso, magbigay ng epektibong pagpapatupad at pagbibigay lunas at tiyak na hakbang upang tugunan ang gender-based violence at karahasan. Ang ratification ng C-190 sa Pilipinas ay isa lamang hakbang tungo sa pagkakaroon ng disente at makataong trabaho. Napakahalaga ng pakikipagtulungan ng gobyerno, mga employer, mga organisasyon at mga manggagawa para sa epektibong implementasyon ng C-190. Gayunpaman, habang hinihintay natin ang implementasyon nito, alalahanin natin na malaki ang parte ng bawat isa upang tuluyang maging malaya sa karahasan at pang-aabuso. Hindi lamang sa mundo ng trabaho o paggawa, kundi pati na rin sa pang-araw-araw nating pamumuhay. Simulan natin ito sa pagkilala at pagbibigay ng respeto sa bawat individual at sa ating mga katrabaho na nakakasama natin araw-araw. Simple man ito pakinggan, bare minimum ika nga nila, ngunit ito ay isang mahalagang simula upang matamasa ng bawat isa ng bawat manggagawang Pilipino ang isang ligtas, disente at makataong trabaho.
on Yusek Betonyo's welcome remarks, no, he reiterated that ILO Convention 190 emphasizes us to recognize what are the unacceptable behaviors and the acceptable behaviors that respects workers as human beings. So it's human rights based. And he also mentioned some of the pointers, practical guides, wherein we can effectively implement the convention. So he included the strengthening of our advocacies, our info dissemination. He also mentioned how we can mobilize our tripartite partners to further advocate this to the employers and labor sector. He also mentioned how we can integrate this convention and the provisions of ILO Convention 190 in our programs and policies, of course.
And on a workplace level, he also recommended having a anti-drug-free workplace-like policy that is integrated in each of your companies, and also to ensure that safeguards are in place for the victims, such as privacy and adequate protection.
Okay, so now let us proceed with our discussion. So a quick overview of this one and a guideline for the speaker. So for the efficiency of our discussion, may we remind our discussants and the member of each of you that you are given 15 minutes at most for your presentation to share your insights. So you can ask the tech assistance for that, but we will also have a clicker on the table on the podium for you to share.
Okay, with that, we move on to our formal discussions, and let me introduce our first speaker. Miss Maria Rebecca Rafaela R. Bailosis is a supervising gender and development specialist at the Philippine Commission on Women, where she currently supervises the monitoring and evaluation team within the Policy Development, Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation Division, which is responsible for the review of GAD plans and budgets and GAD accomplishment reports of the agencies, as well as the preparation of reports on national and international policies and commitments related to women and gender equality. Rebecca earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Political Science, graduating cum laude from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She also holds a Master of International Studies degree, majoring in International Cooperation from the Seoul National University, where she graduated with high honors. For her scholarship re-entry plan, she is working on strengthening monitoring and evaluation of official development assistance for gender equality and women's empowerment. Outside her professional commitments, she finds solace and joy in indoor gardening with a particular fondness for petunias, also known as nerve plants. Oh, this reflects her belief that just as a well-tended garden flourishes under thoughtful and constant care, organizations must also strategically plan their actions and allocate sufficient resources to effectively achieve their gender and development goals. So may we call on stage Ms. Maria Rebecca Rafaela R. Bailosis.
Sorry.
Good morning and happy Women's Month. Yes, happy Women's Month to everybody. So on behalf of the Philippine Commission on Women, we would like to thank the Institute for Labor Studies of the Department of Labor and Employment for organizing this forum on how we would be implementing the provisions of the ILO Convention 190, no? So as it's Women's Month, so we are really happy to be discussing the ways forward for the implementation of this convention because as we all know, women could be disproportionately affected by various forms of gender-based violence and harassment in general. So It was in November, but of course, our continuing advocacy to prevent all forms of violence, no? So we had the 18-day campaign to end violence against women in November, but now we are celebrating the Women's Month. So we hope that the advocacy would continue not only in this month, but throughout the year. Next slide, please. Could we go back a few slides? There. Ayan. So as I've mentioned, women could be disproportionately affected by gender-based violence or violence in general. So globally, almost 1 in 3 women have been subjected to physical and or sexual intimate partner violence, as well as non-partner sexual violence, or both, at least once in their lifetime. No, in the Philippines, in the latest National Demographic and Health Survey in 2022, the percentage of those ever partnered women who experience violence is at 17.5%. So we're lower here in the Philippines. So showing also the accomplishments that the country has made in terms of preventing violence. Okay, so may I continue while our technology catches up? So this is the reality when we do our activity live. Yes. So in terms of help-seeking behavior, which we want to address with ILO Convention 190, no? So across the globe, less than 40% of women who experience violence sought help or any sort of help, and less than 10% of those sought help from the police. No? So in the Philippines, our help-seeking behavior towards the police is higher. No? So if it's 10% globally, so in the Philippines, it's at 34%, showing confidence to our institution. But still, this is 34%. So how about the majority who are not reporting to the police? So what are the reasons? No, so be it personal or be it a gap in the system. No, so we need to really address the help-seeking behavior of women in terms of seeking help to address or prevent, eliminate violence. So I have in my slide actually the 2021 violence against women cases reported to the Philippine National Police. No? So one of the highest forms of violence against women reported to the police is the violation of the Anti-VAUSI Act. So the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act of 2004 at 7,614 cases. No? So this year we are actually, this Women's Month, last March 8th, we celebrated the 20th anniversary of the passage of this law, which addresses intimate forms of violence. No, so this is not just domestic violence, no, because it's not just happening in the workplace, as we all know, because of the evolution within technology. So some of them are technologically aided, so happening outside the domestic sphere, but still within the intimate partner relation setting. No, so other forms of that, we have seen an increase of reporting of cases of harassment. No, with the passage of the Safe Spaces Act, with the advocacy that we are doing for the passage of this law. So even those experiencing street harassment really pursue cases happening against them. No, so reporting to the police, filing cases in court, and we know that whenever our commission receives even 1 or 2 of these court decisions because the perpetrators, but rehabilitate them. So we are providing them gender sensitivity training, no? So ensure that the violence does not happen again, no? So when we see that these are cases of street harassment, we see now the effectiveness of our advocacy in terms of our stakeholders coming to us, reporting their cases, and making sure that our laws do not remain just on paper. So this is actually the implementation of ILO Convention 190 supplements or complements our commitment under the United Nations Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. So violence and harassment, specifically gender-based violence, is one of the forms of discrimination against women, which defined under the convention is any form of distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex, which has the effect or purpose of impairing or nullifying the recognition, enjoyment, or exercise by women, irrespective of their marital status, and on a basis of equality of men and women, of their human rights and fundamental freedoms. So we also have the definition of violence against women provided in the 1993 United Nations Declaration on the elimination of all forms of violence against women. So in the 1993 DEVAW, we define violence against women as any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of or acts of coercion, arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private life. So with ILO C-190, we have the definition of violence and harassment in the world of work. No? So the existing law that we have in the Philippines focuses much on the workplace itself. No? But with the convention, it expands it to the world of work. No? So it expands the places, no, whether this be in person or even virtually, where violence and harassment could happen, as well as the person that could be covered. No? So one important aspect of C-190 is its explicit recognition of gender-based violence and harassment as a pressing issue within the world of work. So by acknowledging the disproportionate impact of violence and harassment on women, the convention underscores the need for targeted measures to address this systemic problem. Next, please. So I think that a lot of us know this, and this has been emphasized. So the coverage of protection is not only covering the women, but all workers and other persons in the world of work, be they be employees, as defined by our national law and practice, persons working irrespective of their contractual status, those in training, including the interns and apprentices. So the other day, we noted this as one of the gaps of our Safe Spaces Act during the committee hearing of the Senate Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality. So workers whose employment has been terminated, the volunteers, even those that are not yet part of the work setting, as they are the job seekers and job applicants. So they are included in the protection from violence and harassment, as well as, of course, those exercising authority, duties, or responsibilities as employers. So it's not only with a C-190, our emphasis is not only on the employers, but everybody, each and every one of us, including the protection for employers. Because if we have our CODI in our organizations, it's important that they are also protected from violence and harassment so that they will be able to investigate harassment cases without fear, coercion, so that it could be impartial and that there will be greater trust to the mechanism. So it also expands the violence and harassment in the various fields or areas of work. So the traditional workplace setting, those including work-related trips, even work-related communications are included, employer-provided accommodations, and even our journey when we commute to and from work. So the emphasis on the importance of preventive measures to create safe and inclusive workplace is emphasized in C190. It calls for policies and practices that promote zero tolerance for violence and harassment, along with measures to protect and support victims, including access to justice and remedies. So as we have ratified the Convention 190, we commit to strengthening and creating legislative frameworks that protect all workers from violence and harassment, including enacting laws that explicitly prohibit such behavior. And as noted by Yusek Bitonio, establishing and operationalizing mechanisms for reporting and addressing incidents, and providing, of course, support services for victim survivors of violence and harassment. So another critical aspect of the convention is its focus on awareness raising and providing education and training on the prevention of violence and harassment. So if our workers are empowered with the knowledge and skills to recognize, prevent, and address such behavior, the convention helps in creating a culture of respect and dignity within the world of work. So by doing so, we also reinforce the principles of gender equality and non-discrimination in the world of work. So when women know that their rights are safeguarded, they are most likely to assert themselves, pursue career advancement, and contribute meaningfully to the workforce. So one of the ways by which we are able to do this is through gender mainstreaming with the initiatives. We have been showing the GAD initiatives of the Department of Labor and Employment, which has been awarded last year as a Silver GAD Timpala awardee for exemplary GAD focal point system, as well as for the national government agency. No? So we can see in the DOLE that it's not only the institution, the mechanisms are also working, and we hope to be able to replicate that in other national government agencies who are duty bearers for this convention. So as way forward for implementing C190 within the Gender and Development Framework, so here are some of our recommendations. So first is addressing the gaps by amending and enacting new gender-based violence laws and policies. So we already have a lot of policies, no, starting with the Anti-Rape Act, the Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, and the more recently, the Safe Spaces Act. But we could see that there are gaps in these laws, and we could still improve them to really cover all workers, all those who are involved in the world of work. So we hope to be able to amend or enact new laws to address various forms of violence and harassment. Second is the strengthening and operationalization of mechanisms for implementing, enforcing, monitoring, and evaluating our initiatives. So we need to build a culture of trust because, as we have seen, the help-seeking behavior is not yet fully optimized. We need to build the trust of our stakeholders that when they report their cases to us, their job security, their economic activities will not be affected, that they will be free from retaliation, and this will make our mechanisms more effective. So another is the allocation of sufficient resources for the national government agencies. We have our gender and development budgets, and we need to also know how to utilize other fund sources. No, so we are looking also at partnerships with international organizations, with our private sector. So it's not only the government, as mentioned by USEC, who is the duty bearer for this. Even our private sector, each and every one of us has a duty to implement C190. No? And then, of course, the strengthening of the collection and reporting and use of data, more specifically sex disaggregated data, and the data that is disaggregated using other social markers to also determine who are the most vulnerable to a particular form of violence and harassment. Because we are not a homogeneous group, the employers group and even the workers group, they are not homogeneous groups, and we need to see what appropriate interventions are necessary for them. No, so even the forms of violence within the region, across the sectors, they are different. So we need to look into the data to really be able to address them. And then improving the accessibility and quality of victim survivor centered services. So that is one issue, the awareness of the stakeholders or the rights holder to the services that we are offering, and addressing the issue of accessibility. During the pandemic, this is a huge gap that we had to address when a lot of people were confined in the home, and the cases of domestic violence rose because people are not able to report their cases or seek help from either the government authorities or even from their families. So we need to leverage on technology, and as mentioned by Yusek, maximize the use of various platforms for accessibility. And then building a culture of respect and nonviolence through advocacy, education, information, and communication, as well as the rehabilitation of perpetrators. So this is important in building a culture of respect and nonviolence. So it's not only the victim survivors whom we need to empower, but we should also focus on the needs of perpetrator, no, addressing the root causes of violence and harassment. And finally, building partnerships among various stakeholders. Next slide, please. So as implementing C190 is a collective responsibility, and we need a whole of society approach, a whole of nation approach. So we call on the government, the employers, workers, and all stakeholders to combat violence and harassment so that we can eliminate and challenge harmful norms and practices, promote gender equality, and promote social justice and inclusivity. So maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Ma'am Becca, for your presentation. And yung presentation ni Ma'am Becca, no, it complements what Yusek Bitonyo said earlier about how we could efficiently implement C190. No? So small steps towards reaching our grand vision, or the vision given by the convention. Inform you that before our speaker evaluation form, may we remind everyone to answer and submit this form to the secretariat. This is a required form as part of the customer satisfaction measurement ng PCW. So please accomplish this, and we'll give you a minute to do that. And while you're answering this form, I would like to inform everyone that we already have 105 participants sa ating Zoom. Hello there sa ating mga virtual participants. I hope you had a very ano na yung inyong mga isip on how to implement this C190 and the policies in your office, ano. And we also have viewers from our live stream in FB. Hello din sa inyong lahat. So while we are waiting to introduce our next speaker, we would like to also ask you to uh, scan the QR code about our development event evaluation form for the for Labor Studies din. So later we will be flashing the QR code on your screens, and while waiting po we can answer this via online. And this form will be open until 11:45 noon. So as yung katulad ng ginagawa namin sa ibang events, pagsagot nyo ng aming CSM form, you would be giving your certificate of appreciation, certificate of participation. Okay? So may I call my colleague, Ms. Cheska, to introduce our next speaker?
Thank you, Ms. Choi. So we just have a slight change on the program. So instead of Director Jeric, may we call on Mr. Brent Kenneth Calvo from the Bureau of Workers with Special Concern to present the presentation from BWSC.
Maraming salamat, Ms. Cheska, at magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Hello po sa ating live participants at saka sa ating mga virtual participants sa ating activity ngayong umagang ito. So, originally po talaga, si inasmuch as Director Satumbo would like to be a part of our panel of panelists right now, apparently, unfortunately, siya po ay kinakailangan mag-attend sa personal and medical needs. So right now po naka-leave. So kami po sa Women Workers Development Division ay naatasan to represent the Bureau on her behalf. So ang naka-assign po na topic sa amin ay yung mga initiatives ng Department of Labor and Employment or ng Bureau of Workers with Special Concerns in relation or in support doon sa ratification ng ILO C-190. We also deem this an appropriate venue para i-present din po sa inyo yung mga plano po ng BWSC ngayong na-ratify na po yung ILO C-190. So ayun po, we take note po yung nangyari pong public hearing no October 2023 last year na kung saan yung Senate Committee on Foreign Relations meron pong call for the creation of a interagency technical working group. So ayun po yung technical working group na po iyon ay naka-assign po na mag-conduct ng environmental scan sa ating national laws, mga policies, and at the same time mga institutional mechanisms to ensure yung ating compliance sa ating obligations as a ratifying state ng ILO C-190. So far po, while awaiting po instructions from the Senate Committee and from our principals, ang current instruction po sa BWSC is to conduct mga advocacy activities to raise awareness patungkol sa core principles and mga salient features ng ILO C-190. So yes, introduction pa lang po iyon. Uusog na po tayo doon sa ating main topic po. So ito po yung mga measures po ng BWSC in relation po doon post-ratification ng ILO C-190. Ayun. Ayun, nakisama na rin po siya. So una-una po dito, tulad nga na nabanggit kanina, ang instruction is to conduct massive advocacy campaigns. We understand po ng ILO C-190 at mga concepts na pinipresent or as provided po ng ILO C-190 ay very relatively new para sa ating mga clients. Hindi na po masyado sa DOLE employees kasi lagi naman po nating itong na-encounter at na-mention sa ating trabaho. But for our clients, ito po ay yung mga konsepto ay relatively new and of course would require further understanding. So especially po sa mga workers engaged in unique or peculiar work settings or work arrangements tulad ng mga workers in the informal economy, mga kasambahay, relatively new itong mga concepts, yung concepts ng world of work, violence and harassment. So, advance siya. Okay, so balik lang po tayo. Yes. So ngayon po, si BWSC po ay nagplan or nagkapag-conduct po ng dalawang orientation exercises on ILO C-190. Yung una nga po, naganap na po noong March 12, isa po itong online orientation with our Dolly employees patungkol sa ILO C-190. Now, ang goal po nung naturang online orientation was to provide or to help our employees have a uniform understanding or appreciation doon sa ILOC 119. Of course, to understand yung impact ng pag-ratify ng isang convention doon sa ating policy development process at saka sa program monitoring and rollout activities. Yung pangalawa naman po, katatapos lang po kahapon and kasama po dito yung iba doon sa ating orientation and consultation and orientation exercise ng ILOC 190, si Miss Becca, si Ma'am Rian, at mga iba po namin kasama. Kasama namin kahapon, si Miss Arian din po as one of our resource persons. Now, kadugsong po ng paggagawa po ng mga advocacy campaigns ay syempre yung yes. Touchscreen po ba ito? Charot. Oh, di ba? Pack. So ito po yung pagkakaroon ng mga wider consultation and in-depth analysis. So yung yung nasabi ko pong pangalawang activity, yung orientation and consultation exercise on ILOC 190, basically we engaged po with our tripartite partners. Ang purpose po noong naturang consultation was to solicit inputs and insights from our stakeholders, from our partners on how our national laws and how our institutional mechanisms would be aligned or responsive doon sa core principles ng ILOC 190. Right now po, hindi ko po muna ma-share yung results ng naturang usapan yesterday doon kasi kahapon lang siya nangyari at kailangan pa pong i-process ito ng Activity Secretariat. However po, generally, yung recurrent na theme or recurrent points raised by our stakeholders was basically kinakailangan po magkaroon ng isang mekanismo covering yung mga cases on violence and harassment experienced by our workers, especially yung mga marginalized and nasa peculiar work settings or work arrangements tulad ng mga kasambahay, workers in the informal economy, tapos workers involved or engaged in the gig economy. Ayun. So ang pangatlo naman po yung incorporation ng ILOC 190 sa ating DOLE-GAD agenda. Kung ating pong natatandaan, no March 4 ay nilaunch po ng DOLE yung GAD Agenda 2024 to 2028. Ito po yung nagsisilbi nating blueprint in ensuring that gender perspectives and gender-related concepts are mainstream sa ating mga polisiya, sa ating mga programa at mga aktibidades. And considering po na yung impact ng ILOC 190 sa ating magiging policy development and program monitoring activities, and at the same time recognizing po yung important role ng department sa pag-i-implement ng mga programa responsive to the ILOC 190, nakita po namin as a forward-looking approach na i-incorporate na po yung ILOC 190 doon sa ating GAD agenda. So yung mga consultation activities po namin tulad na naganap kahapon, basically po, we also used it as a venue to identify gender-related issues and at the same time, mga indicators na pwede nating incorporate sa ating GAD agenda para siguraduhin po ng ating yung department po hindi lang po siya compliant doon sa ating obligation sa ILOC 190 but also to ensure na ang ating mga programa ay gender responsive and gender sensitive. So doon po, very short lang po ang aking presentation kasi ayun nga, like I said, awaiting instructions pa po kami from the Senate Committee and of course from our principals. Muli maraming salamat sa pakikinig at magandang umaga po.
Thank you, Brent. Ayan. So, yung very short and very concise presentation ng ating colleague from BWSC and I think yung ating mga participants from the DOL is very clear no kung ano yung nangyayari sa department with yung ating existing programs no that would help in making sure that the provisions of the convention is being implemented sa atin.
Okay, tama ka dyan, Ma'am Joyce, no? But with no further ado, let us introduce our next speaker, no? He is an OIC director of the Commission on Human Rights.
Yes, Dr. Jeric Gerald C. Go is currently the OIC Director 4 of the Human Rights Education and Promotion Office of the Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines. He is a registered nurse, registered social worker, and a licensed professional teacher who finished his Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree and a Master's of Social Work, majoring in Social Work Administration at Western Mindanao State University in Zamboanga City. He obtained his Doctor of Healthcare Management degree from the University of the Visayas in Cebu City and a certificate in teaching from the College of the Most Holy Trinity Catholic Foundation. He is instrumental to the creation of the Human Rights Institute of the Commission on Women's Rights. He authored several books. He is the primary author of the book entitled Nursing Leadership and Management of Human Resources, Integrative Approaches from Theory to Practice, and is one of the contributing authors of the book entitled Community Health Nursing in Philippine Health Setting and a co-author of Research Procedural Manual for Social Workers. For his involvement with volunteer works in the community, Dr. Go has been awarded as one of Senator Roseller T. Lim's 5 Outstanding Zamboangueño Young Leaders, or the FOZYL, in 2018, a finalist of the Catalino and Benitez Yap Foundation CSR Youth Awards in 2020, and Outstanding Social Worker of the Philippines in 2020 by the Philippine Association of Social Workers Incorporated, or the PASWI, and the 2022 Outstanding Occupational Health Nurse of the Philippines by the Occupational Health Nurses Association of the Philippines Incorporated. May we welcome on stage Dr. Jeric Gerald Go.
Thank you. That was in preparation for next year's election, so please don't forget me. I hope makonsider niyo ako for Senate. Ayan. I just feel to include in the bio note that was requested. I used to be part of the Department of Labor, Director Bredna. I was once a labor inspector deployed in Region 9. So it's nice to be back home. My salutations to the ladies in the executive table, ma'ams, to my co-panelists, to everyone here present and to those joining us via Zoom. Buenos dias a todos damas y caballeros. Maayong buntag sa atong tanang. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh kanyukatan. Basically, we were requested to join you here today to share with you, or rather to highlight the importance of rights-based framework on the Convention of 1901. 190. Tingnan, gumagawa ako ng ibang convention. Now to start, sorry, may clicker. Ito po ba? To start, let us first go back to the definition of human rights. Kasi mahalaga po talaga siya. In the past years, many of us misunderstood the importance of human rights, but many of us enjoy it. So internationally, we define human rights as universe, something as rather human rights are universal and inalienable, which means they're applicable to everyone, anywhere. States have the obligation to fulfill the needs of the people. Human rights and fundamental freedoms are the birthright of all human beings. Their protection promotion is the first responsibility of government. Kaya nga po, sa atin dito, lahat po ng karapatan natin ay basically, ang responsibility is within the government. The Constitution was made by the people for the government to fulfill its obligation to protect its people. However, may konting misunderstanding in between. Kasi minsan sabi natin, human rights ko yan, kaya dapat ibigay mo yun sa akin because that's mine. For example, freedom of expression. I can tell you anything because that's my freedom of expression. Well, may pagkakamali po doon. Our rights end where the rights of others begin. Di po ba? Meaning, hindi ka basta-basta pwede magsabi ng something na masama sa iba. Kasi ang karapatan mo nga mag-express, pero may karapatan rin siya na hindi siya dapat nasasaktan. So dapat may respeto. Hindi ka pwede magsabing pangit ka. Dapat may respeto. Pangit ka po! Ganyan. Joke. Anyways, what I'm trying to point out here is that our rights should be focused on ourselves. At the same time, we need to be mindful of the needs of others. Dito po sa C190, maganda po ito because it also tackles in the workplace. No? Nung ako po isang labor inspector, basing it upon my experience, as at the same time as an active member of ONAP, if you're going to check the EC logbook, kasi yun po yung unang nakikita sa clinic, wala po kayong makikitang cases. Based upon sa region na aking napuntahan, wala kaming nakitang cases na na-highlight ito. Yung mga gender-based violence, una sa lahat, kaya mo bang ilagyan at makikita ng employer mo? So malaking katanungan yon. Second, for those in the informal sector, for example, our mga kapatid nating kasambahay, sino ang magre-report? Saan? Paano siya makakapture? Which is really loud, C190. Because with this, as shared earlier by Yusek, it is high time for us to revisit our policies and the processes for us to check kung paano ba natin makakapture ito. Mayroon na tayong nagawa. Actually, later on, I'll mention the different laws which were passed to highlight and to promote the rights of women, not only women, of everyone here present. No, I forgot to greet everyone. Happy Women's Month. Happy Women's Month. We men who are here celebrate with you and are grateful for all of you. Thank you very much po. Palakpakan natin ating mga sarili, ang ating mga kababaihan. Ayan. With this po sa ating discussion, there are two parties po sa ating... May two parties po. Next po. Kayo na lang po. Next slide po. There are two parties po. Sige po. Sa third slide po, please. Yeah. Sa taas pa. Taas pa. Taas. Yan. Taas pa po. Taas pa. Nagaling ata kayo sa pinakababa. Taas po. Nakita niyo na pang lahat ng slides ko. Next po. Yan. Sige po. So there are two parties daw po sa atin no, in the Philippines. So we have the duty bearers and the rights holders. Tayo po, we who work for government, we're called the duty bearers. Kasi for those now who are not talking the language of human rights, unfamiliar masyado, duty bearers, rights holders. Simple lang yan. Lahat tayo nasa gobyerno, we are called duty bearers. Those, our clientels outside of government, they are called rights holders. Jeric, paano yan? Ako ay nag-claim rin ako ng mga services, say for example ni PhilHealth. Can I be considered as rights holders? Yes, we are also rights holders at the same time because we are being served by other government agencies as well. Now, the role of CHR, kasi sabi nyo, ay si CHR, lagi lang yan siya, inaaway niya si gobyerno. No, our role as per the Constitution is we are the conscience of government. Our role is to make sure that government institutions, executive branch, fulfills its mandate. So kung ano matrabaho natin, yun ang aming role. But hindi po totoo na kami ay nagtatawag lamang na atensyon nyo dahil gusto lamang namin. We also give okay cards. Ibig sabihin, if you have submitted, for example, the Congress people, if they have done good legislations, we give okay cards. Hindi na siya pinapansin at napipick up ng media. No? Unfortunately. So ibig sabihin, even those the things that we submit, for example, si DOJ, nagkaroon siya ng Human Rights Center, we also give okay cards kasi we laud the efforts of government into promoting human rights. With this po, with this concept, gusto ko lang po emphasize that the duty bearers, we have an obligation to fulfill, no, in terms of giving the benefits what is due to our people. And as rights holders, we need to claim them as well. Unfortunately, hindi po lahat ng tao alam na sila ay may karapatan. No? Especially nung time na nag-inspect ako, sila, the workers, okay na sa kanila ang ganitong salary wage kahit hindi siya minimum. Kasi ang takot niya mawalan siya ng income. hindi niya nakita na karapatan niyang mag-demand. At because of that, dun pumapasok ang abuse. Kaya ang laki po ng responsibility ni Department of Labor to make sure that the rights of these people, of these workers are protected. More so, through the ratification of C190, it's very important for us to be mindful of this gender-based violence, especially yung mga trauma in terms of, kasi sabi nila, ay, wala naman po kami nakita, mental. Ngayon, no? In the promotion of mental health, ang dami po ngayon cases of mental health-related violence rin, no? Especially sa mga kababaihan natin. Hindi po totoong babae ka lang, babae ka. No? Tingnan niyo ang executive table na to. Sino na ko po? Mga babae. Ibig sabihin, gone were the days ng mga babae, ang sasabi nila ay, di ba, sila ay parang support lang. They could be support at the same time, they could also lead. Di ba, equal tayong lahat because anyone can lead. We've seen that in the past. We've produced two female presidents at that. So, this is really high time for us to be looking at ways for us to capture rather the rights of those in the vulnerable sector. Next slide, please. So what is rights-based approach? Rights-based approach is an approach based on rights or human rights which are enshrined and exist in various international and often national documents such as treaties, charters, conventions, as what we're discussing right now. They're legally binding in many cases on states, which means countries and governments have an obligation to ensure that these rights are fulfilled. Next slide, please. It has three main principles: participation and inclusion, which is yung po yung nakikita natin sa C190. Participation in a sense that in developing policies, we involve everyone, especially those who will be affected, the women, diba? And all other sectors, the vulnerable sectors at that, to include the PWDs, and then equality and non-discrimination. Ibig sabihin, we need to take into consideration that hindi na tayo dapat namimili sinong pwedeng maging nandito sa posisyon na ito, as long as equal opportunity. Siya, pinapatanggal natin yung mga barriers. Yung naglalagay tayo, only men. Then dapat siya, everyone can apply. Then you look at that capability if they can fulfill that function. Accountability and transparency are mutually accountable at that. Rights-based approach is relevant and quite important because it is often contrasted with the traditional need approach. Dati po kasi, kapag tayo gumagawa ng policy, it really depends upon the need. Di po ba? It's upon the need. But now po, rights-based approach is shifting more from a focus on individual or groups to a focus of universal rights. Tinitingnan natin, ano ba ang pangkalahatan? Ano ba ang effect nito? And human rights are universal, as shared earlier, and inalienable, which means they are applicable to everyone, everywhere. And states have the obligation to fulfill. Next slide, please. Ito po yung three main functions of the state. We in government, we need to respect, protect, and to fulfill. I'm sure for those who are attending human rights lectures, paulit-ulit na po ito. Respect. The state must refrain from interfering with or curtailing the enjoyment of human rights. Ibig sabihin, kailangan si state he develops policies or processes to make sure na mabenepisyo ng mga tao ay nabibigay. Protect. States are to protect individuals and groups against human rights abuses and fulfill. States must take positive action to facilitate the enjoyment of basic human rights. Next slide, please. It is enshrined in our Constitution. Nasa saligang batas po talaga natin. The state values the dignity of every person and guarantees full respect for human rights. Kung kaya po, hindi pwedeng baliwalain ang karapatang patao. Kasi ang ating tinitingnan dyan is dignidad. What is dignity? It is the inherent worth and dignity. It is the inherent worth of a person. Bawat isa sa atin, regardless of status, kung ano man ang natapos natin sa pinag-aralan, wala po yan. Kung ikaw ay pinanganak, ikaw ay tao, ikaw ay nabuhay na, may kwan ng puso mo, nagkwan na siya agad, ikaw ay may dignidad at kailangan kang protektahan. Yun po yung sasabi natin dyan. Next slide, please. Acknowledging that violence and harassment in the world affects a person's psychological, physical, sexual dignity, and family and social environment, we therefore say that the rights-based framework of the Convention 190 is necessary to make sure that all areas are to be included. Now, recently po, last May, the Department of Labor and Employment through Secretary Benny met with our chairperson in Quezon City. I think it was together with Director Bakay. Now I think she's already executive labor arbiter. Tama, Bakay. We've met and then we've agreed to come up with a memorandum of agreement in terms of sa tripartite mechanisms, how we could assist Dole at the same time to strengthen human rights education for the labor sector. Last October, that dream came into reality. We've inked that MOA. Now, BLR and our bureau, the Human Rights Education Promotion Office, are now in coordination to develop human rights education as part of our commitment into promoting C190 as well as furthering human rights education. That is how serious we are in the Philippines kasi kaya naman po magtulungan tayong lahat for us to be able to further human rights education. And at the same time, last May, I would just like to share with you, last na po talaga siya, the Center for Gender Equality and Human Rights, or CGEHR, in partnership with the International Labor Organization and the Federation of Free Workers, and the Nagkaisa conducted a training on ILO Foundation, Fundamental Gender-Related Conventions for Women Leaders in March 2022 to 23, 2023. Next slide, please. Next slide po. Yan. So these are the recommendations no when we consulted this women group on policy advocacy. Women, the group will push for Philippine ratification of the Violence and Harassment Convention, or the 190, which as a result of that we really talked to Congress, and at the same time we were part of those who pushed hanggang sa masign siya ni President and then ratified siya by Senate last year. Push for the passage of the Magna Carta for the informal workers. Push for the passage of the Human Rights Defenders Bill, which, mind you, ang ginagawa namin strategy ngayon is we go from one region to another and then push for local ordinances while waiting for the national law. At the same time, next slide please, on push for the Philippine, refile of the anti-red tagging bill, push for the passage of the Protektadong Online Workers, Entrepreneurs, Riders, and Raketera, or POWER Act. And then next slide please. On social benefits and other issues, push for the private hospital workers issue on COVID allowance, and then I'll advocate for the abolition of the Joint Industrial Peace and Concern Office and the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, or the NTF-ELCA. And of course, continuous capacity building initiatives for women workers. So basically, at the end of the day, we would just like to tell you, we laud the human rights framework of the Convention 190, and we invite everyone to take part, especially in promoting the rights of those in the vulnerable sector, particularly of women, of girls everywhere. Once again, mayang buntag sa tanan. God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Dr. Jeric. So our next speaker is a representative from the employer sector. And it's my honor to introduce Miss Nanette Fernando, or Nanita Fernando. So to her friends, she is called Nanette, and she has more than 25 years of experience in human resource management in the academe and the corporate world. She started her career as a researcher at the School of the Labor and International Relations of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, where she also co-wrote several researches on the key policy issues on employment and industrial relations of the Department of Labor and Employment and the International Labor Organization. She honed her skills in human resources in her stint at some of the biggest food companies in the country, where she served as the senior HR position. Currently, Ms. Fernando is a senior HR consultant of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, or ECOP, where she conducted several researches on various concerns such as the TVET, or the Technical Vocational Education Financing and Delivery Mechanisms, and responsible business conduct, developed the digital self-assessment checklist for the compliance, and facilitated the soft skills training among various associations and groups. particularly for the women worker. Ms. Fernando graduated from the School of Economics, University of the Philippines, Diliman. She had her postgraduate studies in development studies from the Institute of Social Studies, The Hague, the Netherlands. Again, Ms. Danita Fernando.
Maraming salamat. Sobrang haba nung intro. Grabe, kaloka. Anyway, for all of us here, happy International Women's Day, Women's Month. And to all our men, saludo po kami sa mga magulang ninyo, sa inyong mga nanay, no? For raising great people, great men like you. Okay. So having said that, my role here is to share with you what are the initiatives that the Employers Confederation of the Philippines has been doing insofar as promoting and protecting women workers, and at the same time is on promoting non-discrimination in the workplace. So just to start with, okay. Just to start with the discussion, we would like to emphasize, kasi kanina sinabi ni Yusek Bitonio, no, na malaki yung papel ng employers organizations. It's true. Because although many of our concerns now are in the informal sector that are currently beyond that of the influence of the Employers Confederation of the Philippines, which has among its members some of the biggest enterprises in the Philippines. However, we hope that through the supply chain, we will be able to influence how how to protect and to protect the rights of our workers in those vulnerable sectors. Now, to start with, from an employer's perspective, okay, saan po ba to? Sandali ha, ang technology doon pala. Okay. Tama ba? Correct. Ay, sorry. Ulitin natin. Okay. From an employer's perspective, integrating gender equality principles and practices into the organization's policies, culture, and operations is not only a matter of compliance with legal requirements, but also a strategic imperative for fostering a diverse and inclusive workplace environment, as well as for driving business success and maintaining a competitive advantage in today's diverse and dynamic workplace. So here we have identified several principles or practices that will help us ensure not only compliance with labor standards, as the Philippines has been really promoting and also in compliance with international labor standards, but more importantly, because it also helps in building that business competitiveness in the workplace. Okay, so what are these? These are equal employment opportunity. Alam na po natin yan, diniscuss po yan kanina. Now, irrespective of gender, we recognize, employers recognize that we need to provide equal employment opportunities regardless of their gender, their religion, ethnicity, and all those stuff, no? It is really essential because we need to attract and retain talents, because right now there is still a continuing war for talents, no? And at the same time, we also this EEO it mitigates the risk of discrimination, lawsuits, no, lawsuits and reputational damage. So we're looking at this from the risk perspective as well. Safeguarding the organization's brand and market standing. Furthermore, establishing, supporting, actively promoting diversity and inclusion in recruitment processes, employers can tap into a wider talent pool, as what I mentioned earlier, leading to enhanced creativity, innovation, and problem solving within the organization. Another important principle is pay equity. We want to make sure that we address pay gaps, so that there will be fairness and equity in compensation, which will boost employee morale, productivity, and loyalty. Right now, isa ho sa mga problema ng mga enterprises yung attrition. This is really ironic when we talk about high unemployment rate, high underemployment rate, and yet a lot of enterprises are complaining about the inability to get the talents that they need for their enterprises. Ironic, di ba? So closing the gender pay gap will also minimize turnover rates and associated recruitment and training costs, because recruitment cost is really very expensive. No, because part of the training of the recruitment cost also entails onboarding expenses, the initial training that you have to spend for the new employee. And kapag hindi ho natin ito na-fulfill, not only productivity losses because you could not get the right talent for that position that you need, but the initial cost that you would have incurred had the talent leave the company would also be very high. So that's why it is important to always protect the bottom line. No? Lalo na ho ngayon na we are on the recovery stage from the pandemic. Another principle that we are looking at in terms of gender mainstreaming is work-life balance. We recognize that we have responsibilities to ourselves, no, and also not only to our work enterprises. So here we recognize flexible work arrangements, parental leave policies, and wellness programs that contribute to higher employee satisfaction, engagement, and retention. So through this, lately we also note, no, we observe that in many instances, the availability of flexible work arrangements becomes a deal breaker in getting workers, no, or getting employees. So more and more companies are recognizing including flexible work arrangements or hybrid or blended work arrangements in their organizations. Another is, of course, promotion and advancement. No, if we have equal employment opportunities, pay equity, definitely promotion and advancement must also be very we have to be very careful in ensuring that there will be no gender gaps. We understand the importance of promoting gender diversity in leadership positions to drive business success. Here we are talking about breaking the glass ceiling. No, now we see a lot of women, like our esteemed directors and movers from the Department of Labor are women. In many companies, a lot of women are also in leadership positions. We also have presidents for women, if that's an indication already of how we are promoting gender diversity in key leadership positions. We need to actively support the advancement of women and underrepresented groups to foster a culture of inclusivity and equality, leading to higher employee motivation and commitment. Anti-harassment and discrimination. It is not only important that we make sure that the traditional processes are promoting gender equality, but we have to make sure that we provide a safe space to our employees, irrespective of their gender. Hence, we need to acknowledge the legal and ethical obligation to maintain a workplace that is free from harassment and discrimination. And this entails implementing robust policies and procedures to prevent and address harassment and discrimination, a culture of respect and accountability, so that we can foster trust. I noticed that the fostering trust is really a fundamental concern for us if we want to create a culture or environment of a safe space for our workers, irrespective of their status. And of course, there should be training and awareness, providing employees with education and resources on topics such as unconscious bias, diversity, and inclusion, promotes understanding and empathy among the workforce. So we see here the importance of involving the total workforce, not just the leadership, or in our case, from government. So this is we really appreciate this opportunity for us to kick off the orientation. Okay. To kick off, no? Yung ginagawa po natin ito. Anyway, here we also included here what we see here as the case of the Employer Confederation of the Philippines. We also have established our own Women and Gender Committee a long time ago. Matagal na po yan. Siguro familiar pa ho kayo na the Person of the Philippines has launched the child-friendly workplace, no, as part of that. However, this committee has been inactive and relegated to the sidelines of ECOP because there are other important industrial relations concerns like labor relations, which had been a priority. But we are very fortunate that the ECOP was able to have with us PhilWen and PBCW to join ECOP, and this started the ball rolling. And the Committee on Diversity and Inclusion was established. Now, these are some of the initiatives under the DNI committee. So you see here that once again, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines has activated its participation on policy concerns with regards to diversity and inclusion. The Employers Confederation is not only involved in promoting responsible business conduct among its members, but is also active in national policy advocacy. So, and then through tripartism, the Confederation participated instrumental in the promulgation of international frameworks such as the ILO Convention 190 on violence and harassment and national laws such as the recent expanded maternity leave. And from time to time, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines conducts learning sessions on Anti-Sexual Harassment or Safe Space Act, for example. We also have a toolkit for laws to help our member companies on how to best implement current labor standards and enterprise level institutions. Now, with regards to Kaya yan. Ayan. With regards to C190, here we recognize that C190 is an important pillar in terms of further promoting or cementing the anti-harassment and anti-violence in the workplace. So we work together with the Leaders Forum in really influencing the Senate with regards to the ratification of this principle. Here are some of the programs that we have been implementing. We also conducted earlier, we mentioned about the soft skills training program that we conduct for women, but also equally important is that we have recently launched the digital self-assessment checklist. And the digital self-assessment checklist aims to prepare our enterprises for eventual labor inspection. And included in that checklist are the principles or the standards that enterprises need to observe to ensure that there is non-discrimination in the workplace in terms of pay, recruitment, as well as training and all other related stuff. Included there also is that ensuring that there is a CODI, no, an anti-sexual harassment practice or policy in the organization. So ito po yung mga ginagawa po natin ano, na non-discrimination. The RBC module, this is being implemented or run by run by the Employers Confederation. Okay. So ito po yung mga ginagawa natin. As what we said, we are adopting workplace policies. Aside from the training, coming up with tools, we're also assisting our member companies so that we'll be able to adopt workplace policies that will address the vulnerability of other categories of workers. What is nice about the DSAC checklist that we did was that it includes not only the enterprise, but also their supply chain. Okay. We also conduct our risk assessment as part of the OSH. Okay. Oh ba yan? Yeah. Also part of the OSH, no? Yung risk assessment, and included na rito yung risk assessment and anti-violence. Okay. So just to wrap up, we see that working environments that are free from violence and harassment are more productive. This is something that we continuously advocate among our members and really is the principle behind our support for anti-violence and anti-harassment policies or advocates of the government. And we see that more and more companies have policies, practices, and strategies that protect women workers, which we hope can be sustained through the constant collaboration between all stakeholders involved, the government, employers, and workers. And with that, our tagline po, responsible employer, sustainable business, and inclusive workplace. With that, maraming salamat. And good luck po sa implementation natin ng C190.
Thank you, Miss Ninette.
Thank you, ma'am. So thank you for giving us a very comprehensive discussion no on the role of the employer sector, particularly the ECOP no in combating violence and harassment, and also your initiatives in your organization. Hindi lang po sa pagiging reactive on violence and harassment, but also yung inyong mga programs that have been in existence since before we ratified the convention. So that is an open opportunity din para sa ating mga audience no sa Zoom, sa Facebook on how the employers share the commitment in implementing the provisions of our laws no.
Okay, so going on to our last speaker for this session, may I introduce Ms. Fidelina Heraldes, who is the current City President of the United Domestic Workers of the Philippines or United Muntinlupa Chapter, and she previously served as the Internal Vice President at United and also an active member of the Labor Center, Sentro ng Nagkakaisa at Progresibong Manggagawa o Sentro, and contributed to the campaign for the ratification of ILO C-190 in the previous years. May we call on the stage Ms. Fidelina Heraldes.
Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Maayong buntag sa inyong tanan. Pasensya na po kayo sa Tagalog ko kaya ako'y taga Cebu. Bisayang dako. Nais ko pong ibahagi ng aming mga nagawa sa United para sa nakaraang campaign para maibsan ang karahasan ng kasambahay dahil sa prone po kami sa harassment at panliligalig ng aming pangliligalig ng kasambahay sa loob at labas ng tahanan sa aming mga employers. Nais ko po ring magbigay dito ng mga halimbawa ng aming naranasan katulad sa akin. Naranasan po namin kung paano hindi pantay ang pagbigay ng pagkain, ang oras, at saka yung sahod hindi binibigay, kinukulong kami, bawal kami lumabas, mag-day off or ano pa man. Kaya po naglakas loob po akong sumali dahil gusto ko po lahat ng ganun, mabago po ang pagtingin sa amin. Kasi sa sitwasyon po namin nga isa kaming kasambahay, napakababa po ang tingin ng mga employer namin. May pagkakataon po nga may mga kasamahan din ako sa mismong isang amo kami, may edad 15, 16, 17. Ngayon, wala nang ang kaalam-alam, panay pa sasabihin mga bubo, mga tanga. Yung mga ganyang salita, lalo nilang pinapababa ang pagtingin nila sa amin. Nagkaroon po kami ng self-esteem katulad sa akin nga, isa nang nagiging mahiyain, nanginginig kung magsasalita dahil doon po sa mga naranasan po namin. Kaya po ako naglakas loob din nga lumapit sa aming barangay, Barangay Putatan. Gumawa po kami ng bylaws, tapos gi-registered namin sa barangay. Ngayon, ano na kami ni Kapitan, pumunta po kami sa city level para magkaroon po kami ng proteksyon kasi ang Muntinlupa po nangunguna po sa kaharasan ng kasambahay, lalo na po ang Ayala Alabang. Kaya nga, saan po kami tatakbo? Kasi wala kaming, wala kaming mga basta-basta nga malapitan. Kakausapin lang yung amo, ibabalik lang kami. Ganon din po. Kaya, ako po'y nagpapasalamat din kasi dahil sa sentro, nagkaroon kami ng lakas ng loob para tumayo po sa harapan ninyo. Yan po ang Barangay Putatan. Nagkaroon po kami ng kasambahay desk na binigay ni Kap sa amin. Sa ngayon po, ang plano ni Kapitan, mayroon na siyang sasahurin nga isang tao, isang pangalan lang po para hindi magulo daw sa payroll. Pero lahat po kami ng member, kailangang maghati-hati po kami sa sahod, tapos may 10% para sa aming chapter. Kami po sa ngayon, ang Barangay Putatan po, mayroon pong 180 nga member po ng kasambahay. Sa ngayon, ang pinag-usapan namin kay Kapitan, nga kung pwede, bigyan kami ng ugnayan sa mga homeowners para po ang lahat ng mga kasambahay naka-registered na po sa barangay. Kasi ang hinihiling lang po namin sa panahon ngayon, nga ang kasambahay, magkaroon po kami ng ma-inspection po kami kung ano na pa talaga ang status sa isang kasambahay, sa isang employer, kung minor de edad pa ba, mayroon ba kaming mga kontrata, mayroon ba kaming mga benepisyo. Yan po ang isang sinusulong po namin ng karapatan po namin. Kasi yung C-190 po, halos nandyan na po lahat sa amin eh. Ang karahasan at saka ang violence. Kaya nga, panay kami nadi-discriminate. Nakatikim ng mga kasi wala nga daw mga aral. Kaya kung sana saan ba to? Kaya ang naranasan po namin, ang masasabi ko po, ang tahanan ay isa ring workplace dahil dito nagtatrabaho ang mga kasambahay, kaya kung anumang harassment at violence ay dapat na protektahan ang kasambahay. Ang kasambahay ay isa ring manggagawa na tulad ng ibang manggagawa na may kapantay na karapatan nila at deserve din sa magkaroon ng monitoring sa workplace tulad ng ibang manggagawa na may inspection sa kanilang paggawaan. Kaya kami sa United at Sentro ay nais naming isulong na magkaroon ng inspection sa loob ng tahanan ng mga household employers. Mulat sa pool naman nga nag-umpisa ang C-190 nga ang Sentro po ay suportado na po nila kasi nagpadala rin sila ng representative sa Geneva. Kaya malaking pasasalamat po namin kasi sumali din kami, nalaman din namin kung ano ang karapatan namin. nga isang informal po nga kasambahay. Ngayong nag-ratify na ang C-190 sa Pilipinas, patuloy na tutulong ang mga union ng sentro sa pagpapatupad ng layunin dito. Makakasama niyo kami sa pagtutulak sa batas niyo. Para sa mga kasambahay, nais naming maging oportunidad ito upang masama ang aming lugar paggawa ng inspeksyon, lalo na kayang mayroong mga kaso ng karahasan. Ang kababaihan at kalalakihan sa kilusang paggawa ay patuloy na nagtatrabaho para sa kaligtasan ng lahat ng manggagawa. Maasahan niyo kami sa patuloy na pagsulong sa C-190 at sa iba pong magagandang polisiyan tulad nito. Sa ngayon po, ang kasambahay, pinipilit po naming mag-ano pa kami, gagawa pa kami ng panibagong chapter. At saka yung isang picture dyan nga, marami kami, yun ang, sa barangay poblasyon po yan ng Muntinlupa, yun ang yun ang doon po nakatira ang mga kasambahay nga, living on call. Katulad sa akin ngayon, nagiging on call na ako ngayon dahil mag-level up naman ang mga kasambahay. Natuto po akong umano ng furniture, gumawa ng basket, kaya unti-unti po naming tinitraining po ang mga kasambahay. Sa ngayon, nagkaroon na po kami ng mga kasamahan ko po, nagkaroon na ng in situ certificate sa TISDA kasi ni-request po namin kay Mayor Presnedi dati ang paggawa po ng detergent ng sabon. Sa kasalukuyan po, process pa po ang request namin nga 25 katao nga kasambahay nga magiging housekeeping naman po. Kasi napaka-importante po sa amin nga magkaroon ng certificate, mga iba-ibang training, kahit papaano po para makaramdam naman kami sa sarili namin nga may kakayahan din kami kahit wala kaming mga pinag-aralan. Isa ding masasabi ko, maraming salamat kay kasali po kami sa C-190. Kaya malaking in behalf of Kasambahay United sa buong Pilipinas, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Marami pong salamat, Ma'am Fidelina, and thank you for sharing po. Tama naman po, all-inclusive naman po ang ating Convention 190 and yung ating mga vulnerable sectors kagaya ng ating mga kasambahay ay nararapat lamang na protektahan. So now we are finished with the formal discussions from our 5 speakers. But for this, bigyan muna natin sila ng big round of applause. So thank you. Ang daming perspectives na natingnan natin ngayong araw, no? We have those programs and policies from the government sector, the PCW, CHR, and the DOLE. And of course, we also get to hear yung mga perspectives from our employer and the labor sector. And I'm sure from our face-to-face and our virtual audiences have more clarifications for our panels, for our speakers, kung kaya we would be proceeding with our open forum. We have set up our chairs in front, so may we invite our speakers na maging komportable sa ating mga sofa. Punta po tayo lahat dito. And while they're making themselves comfortable, I would just want to give a few guidelines to make this open forum more efficient. We request that the participants wait to be recognized sa ating mga face-to-face participants, and then you will state your name, the organization you belong to, and to whom you want to address your question before asking the actual question. Sa mga virtual participants naman natin, we also ask na when you type in or you chat your question, please indicate your name and your organization and kung kanino nyo gustong magtanong for clarity. Alright? Ay, komportable na po ba tayo, ma'am? Mga ma'am at sir? Okay, sige. Sige lang. So, we would first entertain some questions from our face-to-face participants. We already have the microphones prepared, and please raise your hand and we would recognize you. And then you can ask your question. Huwag pong kalimutan na i-address sa specific person or kung sa kanilang lahat yung inyong mga tanong, no? Okay, sige, tayo din. Umupo tayo, Cheska. All right. So who will be asking the first question? Please approach Miss Mitch. Siya po ang may hawak ng microphone. Ay. You
Good morning, everyone. So, Brandon Tehipo of the Dole Human Resource Development Service. First of all, thank you po for your very comprehensive discussions on C190, and congratulations to ILS for holding this forum. Just yesterday and early this week, we had a marathon session hearing on sexual harassment case in Cebu. And I've been sitting as chair of the special CODI. Ilang cases na rin po on sexual harassment ang na-handle ko. And usually, ang na-observe po namin is the hesitancy to report sexual incidents of sexual harassment due to fear of stigma or repercussion. No? Ayaw nilang machismis. So despite the fact that we have many laws, existing laws, that can protect the victims of harassment and violence in the workplace, many are still having this hesitancy or many are hesitant to report. So nasabi naman din po kanina ni Yusek Betonyo, we should think of practical considerations on how we can really raise awareness on C190, the provisions of C190. So I know, because we all know naman that harassment and violence is subjective and usually influenced by individual perception. So kanina po na-mention kanina ni Yusek na having a baseline of what is acceptable and not acceptable behaviors is really a good step, no? But yun nga po, we just have to take cognizance of the fact that there may be some acts, no, which may be considered acceptable to one, but may not be acceptable to some. So I just want to get your insights po on how we really can operationalize this directive from our senior official, particularly Yusek Betonyo, on how we can make this baseline of what is acceptable and not acceptable an inclusive one, and really responsive po kung ano po talaga dapat yung mga kailangan nating i-take into considerations with respect to promoting yung gender equality and combating po talaga harassment and violence particularly women in our workplaces. Thank you po.
Who would like to speak first from the panel?
Thank you, Director Bran. On the part of CHR, I think, as shared earlier, ang emphasis natin lagi is the dignity of all. So una sa lahat, we need to take into consideration na kung anong gusto mong trato sa iba, dapat isipin muna rather, how you would like others to treat you, dapat ganun ang trato mo sa iba. Ibig sabihin, oo, golden rule yon, no? So kailangan do good to others para yun din ang reflection sa atin. Second is yung application natin ng Safe Spaces Act, di po ba? Ang gist po ng Safe Spaces Act is kapag the act that ginawa sa'yo, kinomit sa'yo ng co-worker mo makes you feel uncomfortable, then that's the time na kailangan siya i-call out. Kasi yun eh. Minsan kasi mga jokes natin, akala natin okay lang. Yung pala, it's offensive na to others, take into consideration the culture, the background, the like. So, Yung po yun. As long as it makes people uncomfortable, then that's the time we need to call them out. But para hindi na umabot sa pag-call out, we need to emphasize sa culture natin, sa respective workplace natin, ang kalagahan ng respeto sa bawat isa. Thank you.
Thank you. From the work, I guess I can speak from experience, no? When we did in my previous organizations, what we do, and I think ito, no, ang appreciation natin, ang dami na nating batas. Sa totoo lang, malilito ka na. Ang importante doon, how you can make sense of these laws, no? And how you can operationalize it in the workspace, in your workplace. So what I suggest, no, ang mga tips natin, unang-una, may mga HR people tayo na sabi nga, that's your responsibility. No, that's not the responsibility of HR alone. The role of HR in our respective organizations is to guide our people managers. The people managers are the ones who have under them people. No, so what is the organization supposed to do? First, you have to understand what are the laws. Ibig sabihin, we're not starting from zero. Yun nga ang ganda natin eh. We are not starting from zero. Understand what the laws are. And then, what are those things, laws or directions or directives from DOLE, from CHR, that we can adapt to our respective organizations. That's the first step. The second step is use these laws, probably conduct orientations then that will now become part of the HR, no? Na meron siyang part of the safe space, part of the orientation on EEO, on EEO should be observed in all aspects of the employees cycle, no? Tapos, that's a review. Second, yung orientation na yon. And then, there could also be workshops, no, with employees. Because whatever we do, it starts with understanding. Second, also, once they understand, they will embrace, no? They will internalize. And they will become part of the solution rather than be part of the problem, no? Then you could set up systems by which they will be able to yun nga, may stigma, no? May stigma yon o kaya there's fear, hesitation. One is definitely have to set up a CODI, no? The CODI of structured, no? Very structured. So people will have to be trained on how to become members of that. They have to understand that there is a very important role for you to become a member of that CODI. Kasi maraming marites. Masarap magmarites. Lalo na yan, juicy, 'di ba? So that's important. The training, turing equipping the members of the CODI. By the way, when we talk about workplace violence, kinakailangan part of the orientation is that you extend beyond the workplace. Now, that's where the culture comes in, no? I'm sure all organizations have their own respective cultures. Pero sabi nga sa atin is that respect for one another is a fundamental culture natin, part of the values natin. And it could be emphasized so that anti-violence, anti-harassment goes beyond the workplace and into the house, into the home. Kasi there's where a lot of below the radar violence that is happening. Yung mga nire-report sa police, yung nire-report kapag bugbog sarado na, hindi na kinakaya ng tao, kaya niya nire-report. But what about verbal abuse? 'Di ba? Emotional harassment, economic harassment happening in the homes. Hindi aware yung mga babae o kahit lalaki, no, for that matter. And sabi nga ni Director Bitonio, there are a lot of opportunities for us. Kami sa employers group that will now become part of maaring mental wellness namin. 'Di ba? Wellness kasi it's not just in the workplace, but extends, it's a holistic thing, no? That's where it can come in, ma'am. Pero kinakailangan the team that will make this has to be aware that there are opportunities where we can put it in place para we are consistent throughout. No, yung culture, we can use that as a vehicle, as a tool that we can use to really promote anti-violence, anti-harassment. And fourth, if all things fail, there has to be a reporting mechanism. No, whether that reporting mechanism can be in a form of a hotline, whistleblower thing, especially if it involves a senior manager and a lowly rank and file. No, there has to be a whistleblower program, a sort of. Pero to gain the trust, just like what was mentioned earlier, again, orientation, training, and who's going to man that, they will also have to be trained. So what I'm saying here is that everybody should be aware of their responsibilities. They have the right, but they should also know that they are accountable for their actions. They have responsibilities. And that involves a lot of training, orientation, and affirmation, validation, that what we're doing is really, at the end of the day, is really for the organization and also for the personal and professional development of the person. Hope it, yan lang.
So kami naman on the part of PCW, of course, I support the recommendations provided by my co-panelists. So it's really important to build a culture of respect. So sensitization is very important. So we always do the gender sensitivity training, especially for those handling cases, because that is the fear also that for victim survivors, that they would not be understood by the people to whom they are reporting the violence. No, so we need to build that trust and confidence in them that when they report cases, it will indeed be handled in a humane, respectful, gender sensitive manner, no, and the confidentiality will remain. So as we were doing the validation for our awards and incentive mechanism last year, so we looked at the different mechanisms, especially the CODI of those agencies vying for the Gantimpala. And even in our uniformed services, we have seen there how they have set up, because these are male-dominated fields, and the women are really outnumbered, and most of them, they are in the lower ranks, and the perpetrators are their superiors. And the level of hierarchy in this organization is very high. So they have really set up mechanism. We saw it. They even checked the workplace, no? So not only the mechanism, they put QR codes, so they saw that this could work in them, no? So para yung reporting hindi rin makikita, because if you go to an office, you know that this person went there, so it must be her who reported the case. So they thought of ideas on how to do it. They even changed the layout of the offices to include transparent windows. Kasi kapag kasarado yan, that's an avenue for harassment, for violence to happen, no? So they really did an audit of the entire organization to promote a violence-free, or create a violence-free work environment. And as you've mentioned, Director, yung the appreciation of those handling the cases, so it's important, no? We believe in the victim survivor centric approach, no? So what is acceptable, that will be determined by the person receiving the action. When I went on scholarship in Korea, because we're coming from different backgrounds, so that was something that was highlighted to us, because in some cultures, hugging, kissing, it's acceptable. To others, merely bowing is acceptable. So we really did a lot of orientation. So pwede siya na online, pero kung halimbawa hindi yun yung modality, pwedeng focus group. We will use different modality depending kung ano bang sector yung ginagamit natin, to really sensitize people, no? So the rights holder as well as the duty bearers. Kasi kapag hindi po talaga yan, hindi natin makikita yung pag-report ng case, no? So building transparency, if the agency is seeing, the CODI should also provide reports of the cases that they were able to resolve, or how many. No, you don't need to divulge the identity of the persons, but providing reports of the activities that they're doing so that the members of the organization know that this mechanism is really working for them. No? So yung transparency and accountability should always be there.
Kung, ay,
I can also add to that. I remember. Ito isang tip na pwede siguro yung ibang companies can also do, no? During the COVID kasi, a lot of companies set up a hotline. Kasi yung work from home daw can also create some anxiety. Why not also extend that kind of hotline? Kasi supposedly, parang psychological, ano mo yun no? You want to talk to somebody about yung first line mo, di ba? First line of assistance, yung sinasabing yung help, you want to seek help, no? Helpline. So yung pwede kasi ngayon yung mga HMO, they're extending that. But more for because of the feeling of exclusion when you are work from home under COVID. Why not extend it also for acts of violence, no? Ito yung una mo, before you report it to Cody or to your boss, you want to make peace with yourself, di ba? So you have to report it to someone. It's kind of a therapy, di ba, ma'am? You start it, no? Yun siguro yung magandang tip.
Yes, thank you no for our panelists. And then to probe further no, yung inyong mga suggestion is mostly covering the formal sector. Meron po ba kayong mga suggestions or yung mga currently na ginagawa or avenues na pwede namang ma-extend sa ating informal sector kung sila ay nakaka-experience ng violence, whether it's virtual or physical? Since at present po, meron po tayong mga sa mga presinto, meron po tayong help desk. But aside from that, ano po kaya yung pwedeng avenues na mapoprovide natin sa ating mga informal sector? Anyone can answer po.
based po sa nangyari po sa Muntinlupa, lalo na yung Ayala Alabang. Kasi mayroon kaming isang kasambahay nga hindi na niya kinaya ang ginagawa ng boss niya. Ngayon, nag-report siya sa pulis, tumakas siya, nag-report sa pulis. Tapos, pagdating doon sa presinto, pinatawag lang ng pulis ang amo niya. Pagkadating doon, nag-usap, pinapabalik ng amo, kay maganda na kaibigay na daw lahat-lahat. Hindi pa nakarating sa bahay mismo ng amo ang kasambahay. Dinukot na, hinarang na siya, hanggang pinatay, nalaman na lang pinatay, tinapon. Nagkataon, doon pa dinukot sa walang CCTV. Hindi yung taga dito probinsya yun taga Davao. Sana naman, yun nga ang sinasabi ko, kaya nga po, inumpisahan ko po sa sa city nga makausap namin si Mayor, nakatakda pa kami ngayong April 2. Ngayon ang i-discuss po namin nga sana naman magkaroon po kami ng inspection ang bawat kasambahay po nga kailangan talagang i-required nga i-register dahil yun din ang hinihingi din ng DILG sa amin. Kaya yun po, kaya ngayon po ang isa ko ring sa C190 nga sana naman ang nagbuo nito, mayroon kaming mas lalo pang pinapaganda o gagandahan pa ang aming kasambahay.
So, kagaya nga po ng nasabi ni ma'am, no? So, yun po talagang the duty falls on the government, no? Especially for those who are in the informal economy. So, we have at the local level, our barangay vow desk. We also have them designated as the anti-sexual harassment desk because they are the closest to the people to whom victim survivors could report the violence. So, pwede din po yung sa street harassment natin. So, nakita natin yung mga MMDA and minomobilize natin yung mga officers natin on the ground to respond to cases, no? As I've mentioned in my presentation, important yung data collection, no? So yung registration for us to be able to know sino po ba ang mga employer na to, no? Even the because that's in the kasambahay law. So we also hope that the registration for those working in the informal economy, kasi yun nga lang pong survey natin, no, how many are those in the informal economy? Informal sector pa nga ang tiningnan natin before, not the informal economy, because there are those in the formal sector who are actually informal workers, no? So the need for strengthening data support for us to elevate yung ating mga intervention, develop tayo ng appropriate services para sa kanya-kanyang need.
On the part of the employers group, ang intervention ng employers group, I would like to think that the employers group intervention will be more proactive. Kasi by the time that they go to the police, marami ng injuries, no? Marami ng emotional and physical damage that has been done. So on the part of, realistically, the Employers Confederation of the Philippines and its member organizations, our role here is really on education. Education and setting up systems to influence, and orient our member companies and their respective employees who can also be employers of domestic helpers. But at the same time, yung mas may impact, yung Employers Confederation of the Philippines or the employers groups in general will be on the other vulnerable workers, such as those women workers, those who are in small cottage MSMEs, or those in MSMEs or in the informal sector who are part of the supply chain of big companies. That's where we can start. That's why I mentioned earlier we have the digital self-assessment checklist. It listed all the labor standards, including harassment. Kaya maganda po doon ay idagdag po natin yan, no? Yung anti-violence. Para sa ganon, it will jumpstart a discussion, an orientation on what this entails. Not only this will be a responsibility of HR, but now it's a responsibility also of the supply chain. Because as what you know, in the supply chain, what we can encourage our member companies is that, hey, those that violate labor standards down the supply chain should at the very least be educated, will not be certified to be part of your supply chain because of the reputational risk to you as a big company. Ang ganda-ganda ng ginagawa mo, maayos ka, pero down the line pala, you employ your suppliers, they supply child labor, they exploit women. So it will also rebound, no, on you. So those are things that I realistically the employers group can work on.
Thank you, ma'am. Maiksi lang, promise. On the part of the Commission on Human Rights, we would like to share that we have this program, e-lawyering. So you can visit our website for the numbers. Aside from our partners from PAO, CHR also provides lawyers online. 24/7 you can access them. So for our partners from the informal sector, especially if ever services, lalo na kapag sa government, ay hindi nabigay, at the same time, they could also give legal advices as well. So isa po yun sa mga services na pwede nating mabigay ASAP. Aside from, we need this data kasi kapag ito ay malaman ng mga services, ito ay pina-forward namin sa agency concerned for their policy interventions. Kasi of course, ang role ni CHR is conscious of government, our role is more of coordination. So we also encourage everyone to coordinate with us para mas makapture namin yung mga kailangan ating points for clarification and para ma-address sa ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you po. So we have a question from the body.
Magandang umaga po. Tanghali na pala. Ako po si Jean Arcelino po from the Department Legislative Liaison Office. I would like to address my questions to any one of the discussants. when the Convention 190 was discussed in the Senate for its concurrence, the first issue raised by Senator Marcos then was, how do we implement C-190, given that there are existing laws, anti-violence, anti-harassment in the workplace, or not necessarily in the workplace, but for women and children. And so several laws were mentioned that need to be harmonized with Convention 190. Now, what are the gaps that we could possibly see in the existing laws that must be addressed or that must be harmonized with Convention 190? For example, the efforts now in the Senate is proposed amendments to the Safe Spaces Act. They added a provision there wherein penalties will be imposed. And another proposed amendment to the VAUSI, another section, another provision was added there on which online internet harassment will be punished also under VAUSI. So among other laws, from the employer sector, from the CHR, from the PCW, and from the informal sector, ang nakikita po nating gap ay yung kawalan ng database, of which na-mention na po ni Ma'am from PCW. Kasi yun palagi ang tinatanong, ilan ba talaga ang na-violate ang kanilang karapatan? Sa trabaho pa man, sa pagiging babae. Although nakakapag-supply ng data, pero ano ba yung, anong tawag doon? Yung percentage na tinitingnan natin na ganito na ba kalala? Or what are we talking about when we speak of women being violated of their rights? And secondly, ano ba yung nagagawa natin in terms of prosecution? Because CHR has no prosecutorial powers. So, saan ba sila tatakbo? Meron na bang nangyaring mga tawag dito, conviction, if any, para doon sa mga nag-violate ng mga rights? Your comments po. Salamat.
Maybe we could start with CHR? Yes.
Tama po yun, ma'am. CHR has no prosecutorial powers at the moment kasi ang aming charter ay nasa Congress na gumugulong, fingers crossed. But what we could do is really yung more of referral po talaga. And then we acknowledge the jurisdiction of DOLE over sa private sector natin for the employer. So ang aming recommendation is really to come up with a committee to review these policies. So more of ibabalik ko talaga sa DOLE kasi more of it's really up to you to harmonize. Ang role namin sa interagency is really more of technical assistance. I think magkikita-kita. Kami lang nagkikita-kita. So kami lang pa makita nyo doon. But you being the lead kasi CHR will really not be the one to, especially on this issue, we will not be the one to call for because our role is more of observer in all government organizations. So we recommend that DOL to create a special committee and call for the revisions para mas come up with a recommendation for Congress to harmonize all of this. Thank you.
Agree. Sabi nga kaya, dami na natin nakakalito na nga no? Agency committee, and you can invite the private sector end of the day. Ano yung mga pain points, no? Maganda kasi what are the pain points in terms of implementing these laws? And then from the pain points, because if there are pain points, that's where people do the shortcuts, no? They cut corners, no? They cut corners. And that can be a way by which we will be able to harmonize it. Offhand, ang tingin ko more of the problem is really implementation, no? It's really about implementation because there are so many laws. The question is how they are going to implement it. Kanya-kanyang implementation ang nangyayari. But true, we need to have a strong database. Question, how will they report? From our private sector, we also have a help desk, by the way, in ECOP. And as of this morning, wala pong nagre-report doon kasi any employee can report. No? Wala po nagre-report doon ng patungkol sa women, sa mga harassment or abuse, no? So Parang ganun, parang how can we erase that stigma, no? Tapos kasi yung tingin nila, hindi naman verbal abuse yan, hindi naman ano yan, okay lang yan eh. No? Na okay, okay, hanggang sa lumaki na pala. So again, it starts with education. But agree that there has to be a committee that we really study, no? Kasi madaling mag-isip ng batas eh. Ganun eh. Ang question nun, paano mo i-implement eh? Ganun, di ba?
Yes. Thank you po for the question, no? So the importance po talaga of identifying, clearly defining what violence and harassment is, even if, even prior to the ratification of C-190, we are discussing for SDG 11 on safe communities. It's still under tier 2 pa po, no? Hindi pa po talaga natin nakokollect yung data on harassment because it comes in many forms, especially violence. Because it's Women's Month and we've been talking about gender-based violence, but there are other forms of violence that are being covered by C-190 because it's broader in scope, no? So kapag ka pumasok ka sa trabaho tapos overwork ka, that is also a form of violence, no? Because it could cause you psychological harm. So there are various forms that could be included in the definition of violence and harassment under C-190, and there's a need to classify, ano-ano po ba yun, no? For us to define. And yung pong ni-raise niyo pong concern regarding the amendments in existing laws. So yung first gap talaga po dun, the coverage. So marami po dun sa batas natin, they only cover yung pong mga nasa formal sector. So there's really a clamor to strengthen po yung pong coverage for those in the informal economy. So even us, they're asking us about the application of the expanded maternity leave benefit, yan pong Safe Spaces Act, to whom do they report? Halimbawa nga po yan, yung mga nano businesses, no? How everyone is supposed to create a CODI. Pero kung lilima lang po kayo, 15 po kayo, how practical is it to really create a CODI? So it's not really a one size fits all. Even if we have these policies, there are gaps. So we need to address this, no? Yung penalties po niyan. And we could also look at the good practices in certain policies, apply it into another. For instance, in the anti-VAUC law, there is the leave benefit, no? So it provides the support for the victim to survivor. Kung magpa-file ka ng case, syempre ayaw mo mag-absent ka, mawawalan ka ng trabaho, naging victim ka na nga ng violence, mawawalan ka pa ng kita or kabuhayan for a particular number of days. But these are not present in other violence laws. So maybe we could look at how these leaves are actually being implemented and availed by the stakeholders, no? And if this could be applied to others. So tingnan natin yung mga good practices, gaps, and let's try to harmonize through the creation nga po of the technical working group.
Thank you po, everyone. So it is very common simula kanina that the speakers have mentioned. We have extensive policies and programs that protect and promote workers' rights. But isa po sa nagiging concern is yung implementation. We have different implementations for agencies, for offices. So yun yung mga doon natin pwedeng makita yung gaps. So we can harmonize it as we aim para kapag ready na tayong i-implement yung C-190 by next year, planchada na ito for everyone. I think meron pa po from yan. So we will entertain one last question
Sorry,
from the
Abigail de la Rosa from the International Labor Affairs Task Force. Actually, this is not a question but a reaction. No, I commend our guest speaker for a very informative discussion. As we know, we have since we ratified the conventions, we have the obligations to report, no, what we did, what we do in law and in practice. So since as a core convention, we have the obligation to report every 3 years to the ILO. What have we done in law and as well as in practice? But my concern is that siguro kunin ko na lang, take off ko na lang from the speech of Undersecretary Bitonio when he deposited the instrument to the ILO, is that same as dear Brenna said, no? Yung definition of world of work, because many of us looks on the traditional sense of world of work. Classic example when Yusek Betonyo's always been saying is that sa law school, no, ang tradition dyan, when a professor conducts his lecture, he can call his or her student as orc, no? So yun ba is an educational system is also a world of work, no? Second, yung very viral na teacher doon sa during his class, ewan ko, Vinijo, no? So nag-mention siya ng mga words that it could be a form of bullying, no, doon sa mga students, no? So kung nakalimutan ata na yung hindi na traditional sense na ano yung mga world of work. So that we have to understand and define what is world of work. Second is yung concern ko is yung acceptable behavior. Although sinabi po ng mga speakers natin is it depends on culture. Yes, we agree that respect begets respect. Para sa akin kasi ang hirap niyang i-define yung acceptable behaviors. It would depend on culture. Sinabi nga ni Ma'am from PCW is that it would depend on modality. So marami. Third is in relation to that, palaging ine-emphasize kasi yung relationship dynamics between yung parang ang victim lang ay yung subordinate. If you take a look at Convention 190, no, nakalagay dyan, even employers, even superiors can be a victim of harassment or violence. And siguro yung na-mention kanina ni Ma'am is that yung meron tayong problem dun sa help-seeking behavior. Siguro we could also address that kagaya nung appropriate training, awareness. Kasi marami sa mga victims of violence, lalo na sa domestic, is that hindi nila alam kagaya yung ano yung kanilang mga karapatan. That's why may violations na pala, hindi nila alam. Second is more on the economics. Marami doon sa mga biktima ng kababaihan sa bahay is that takot sila mag-report kasi nga palagi yung sinasabi sa mga forum is dependent sila on their husband for economic support. And yun lang, no? Magandang pakinggan lahat ng implementations. Yes, correct po kayo, maraming batas. But ang bigger challenge po sa atin is that how do we implement? Kasi when we report to the ILO, after 3 years from the time na this convention took effect, which is 1 year, ang tinatanong po sa atin, okay, no? We can put all lahat ng mga batas, but more on implementation eh. Kasi tinatanong tayo dyan, ano yung mga statistics, kung may mga nag-file ng complaints, how do those cases were resolved. So, siguro, yun lang po, just a reaction lang. That's it.
Thank you, Attorney Abby. No, food for thought sa ating mga panelists, no, yung comment ni Attorney Abby.
So before we end, any last words from our discussants, from our panel discussants?
Ang masasabi ko lang po sa United at saka sa Sintro at saka sa Kasambahay, malaking bagay po ito sa amin. Narinig ninyo po ang mga hinaing namin. Sana naman, yun lang po ang hinihingi ko, ang kaligtasan lang po ng mga kasambahay. Maraming salamat po sa bumubuo po ng C-190.
So for me po, I've been in government for almost a decade. I know po that there are a lot of gaps in terms of the laws and more so in the implementation, monitoring of it. But I remain hopeful po, no, even if there are a lot of gaps. When I see po yung mga nagre-report po ng cases, kahit pa isa-isa po sila, it's showing po na there's something that we really could do, no, if we all work together, no, those who are in government, like in this fora that we're having, no, to involve everybody. Kasi yun po yung essence po talaga ng celebration ng National Women's Month eh. Para po yung kaalaman dito, so makikita niyo po yung napakaraming tarpaulin, kahit saan po ako pumunta, yung mga nagsuot po ng t-shirt. Alam ko po kahit t-shirt lang po yan, it raises the awareness of people about women's human rights. It makes them curious what these laws or what these logos, what these images mean, no, na sinusuot ng mga tao. So, unti-unti po talaga, no, because we have to go down doon talaga po sa mga communities, yung mga nasa laylayan, no. The SDG wants us to reach those who are most disadvantaged, no, so that nobody will be left behind. And we would really be able to one day, you know, talagang aspirational po siya, create a better work environment, no, so where all people will be free from violence and their rights, not only in terms of work, but their overall human rights will be protected.
What can we say but good luck to all of us in implementing C190. We are really optimistic about this because there have been a lot of strides, achievements that have been done in the past. Sayang nga lang wala tayong database para makita natin kung where we started out and where we are right now. And I think that's the first order of things for us. Unfortunately, yung mga serious cases, yun lang yung nare-report. What about and then those are difficult to address already, no? Is it possible that they're not bringing it to our attention kasi yung maliliit o at least yung maliliit na bagay sinasabi nila na-address na sa local o na-address na sa bahay. Pero at least yun nga, as best practices, sana na-bring up sa attention natin para we will be able to learn from it. So I guess the first step is really this forum, really popularizing it, training people, and assuring people that it is all right to share, to be open about it, and that that entails a lot of trust building among employers, among employees, among everyone, no, irrespective of where you are.
I would like to acknowledge the point raised earlier by attorney. Tama po yun sa C190, hindi lang po siya more of sa workers but also sa employers yun as well, no? So yung rights ng lahat actually is gusto nating i-highlight rin doon. Ang mahalaga dito sa discussion natin today is that we realize that there is much to be done, but at the end of the day, at least we're already doing the baby steps. Di ba? Birthing pains pa lang ito. And we are happy to note that we have the full support of everyone here present. And gaya sabi ni Ma'am, good luck, especially to the Department of Labor and Employment kasi kayo talaga ang mag-lead. But you can you can be assured that we, your partners, are here with you because we would want you to succeed. Because with you succeeding, lahat po tayo sabay-sabay doon. So we look forward to a more paano ba ang kuha natin dyan? A world where human rights is a really a normal for all. Yun po yung we look forward to that na kung saan respeto po talaga sa bawat isa ang siyang namumuno sa lahat. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much again. A round of applause to our panel discussants. But maybe request for everyone to stay in front for the awarding of the certificates. So may we call on our Deputy Executive Director, Attorney Grace, and our Executive Director for the awarding. Basahin ka na lang para picture na lang po kayo. Para po sabay-sabay na lang po ang certificates natin. So, Certificate of Appreciation given to the So, Miss Nunes Fernando, of Employers Consideration,
questions? So, Miss Maria Rebecca Rafaela Arbaliosis of the Philippine Commission on Women. Of course, to Miss Fidelina Heraldes of United Domestic Workers of the Philippines. Thank you. You, our panelists, you may now be seated. To formally introduce the program, we would like to call the Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies, Ms. Janet Damo, to deliver her closing statement.
Wala na ho akong masabi kasi talagang overwhelmed po ako dito sa sharing ng mga insights at mga experiences mo. So kami po nagpapasalamat po kami of course sa aming Undersecretary Benedicto Ernesto Arbitonio Jr. for taking time out kasi si Sir po ay very busy. So hinila lang ho namin siya para siya ay pumunta dito at talagang ito po ay isa sa mga priority ng the department. So naisulong po itong aming advocacy on Convention 190. And of course sa ating mga speakers po, talagang wala po akong masabi, talagang ang gagaling, iba yung mga insights, tsaka ito ay talagang ground experience nila, In fact, marami ho kaming parang yung way forward ho ng institute, marami kaming napulot, katulad ho ng sinabi ninyo na sa tingin namin dapat yung mga best practices na ginagawa at the local level dapat maisulong natin yan, dapat malaman niya ng mga kasamahan natin yung mga simpleng helpline lalo na sa ating mga kasambahay na sila mismo hindi natin yan nakikita kasi sa loob yan ng mga bakura bahay ng kanilang mga yung mga bossing nila so sila ho yung mga angels natin sa bahay na talagang kailangang mag-reach out tayo at importante po ang registration, ma'am. So dapat po isulong po natin yung registration na yan kasi otherwise wala ho tayong basihan. Na ito na pala ganito na kalaki yung ating mga kasambahay, ito yung mga dapat bigyan natin ng pansin. Sila yung mga talagang tinatawag nating vulnerable groups. So tama po yan, dapat talaga makipag-ugnayan sa mga LGUs, sila talaga yon. And then of course, yung ating mga kasamahan po, si Ma'am Nenette po, talagang sabi ko parang familiar, So nung sinabi po ni Yusek Bobot kanina na with UP Soler, ayun. Kling, sabi ko, kaya pala. Kasi po ako nung una dito, nung kabataan ko po. So ako po ay nag-start as a parang junior research assistant sa institute. So talagang ako po ay utusan. Part ho ng research activities namin ay UP Soler. So yung mga boss ko po na nagsisipag-aral sa UP Soler, talagang pumunta ka dyan, kuha mo ako ng libro, hiraman mo ako ng libro. Tatandaan ko yun, pinagalitan ako ng librarian kasi overdue na. Overdue na pa, sabihin mo sa boss mo. Ganun. Sige po, yun po. Yun At kakatuwa po kasi yung mga senior talaga ni Ma'am Nenette po, parang part din po yan ng employee engagement, no? Lalo na ngayon, no, na kailangan natin. Totoo po, meron pong war of talents, no? So kailangan ho talagang how do you retain talents, no? Talagang may ganyan dapat na mga mga ina-advocate o ini-implement at the workplace, no? Yung mga work-life balance, no? Lalo na po yung henerasyon ng ating mga workforce ngayon. Yung mga Gen Z, mga millennials, no? Dapat ganon, no? Talagang kailangan balance, no? Mga mental health na dapat meron tayong ganon, no? Yung mga platforms ginagamit natin, avenues na where we can really have yung communication with them, no? A simple parang open door policy, kahit na sabihin nating traditional, ay kailangan pa rin po natin yan, no? And of course, ang ating kasamahan, no, din po sa sa PCW na suking-suki na ho namin, at talagang sila po ay lagare, lalo na ngayon sa national itong month na to, na dahil ito talaga ang National Women's Month, no, talaga. Pero dapat po for all seasons, wala po hindi siya matatapos for this month o for this year. Ito po ay habang buhay po tayo, this is a forever advocacy po natin, no. At talaga po dapat magpasalamat din ho tayo sa mga kalalakihan, no. 'Di ba? Lalo na yung talagang sumusuporta sa atin, nakakaintindi, no, dun sa mga laban ng mga kababaihan nila, no. Kaya ang mga staff ko ho, sinasabihan ko, kumuha kayo, kasi marami yung single sa institute, no. Minsan nakakalimutan na nila na meron silang buhay, kasi nga ang uwian ho, pag umuwi ho sila, wala na silang kasabay. Gabi na. At pag naman ho, pagpasok naman nila, minsan nauna na yung mga pumasok. So sabi kong ganun, kailangan pag kukuha ng partner in life, 'di ba? Kailangan ho yun talagang yung God-fearing, no? Talagang merong suporta sa ating mga kababaihan, no? Lalo na tayong mga nagtatrabaho. Kasi totoo ho yun, nagtatrabaho na tayo. Pagdating natin sa bahay, di naman ho natatapos ang trabaho natin, 'di ba? Tuloy-tuloy yan. Okay. And of course, kayo, Dr. Jeric Go, kapamilya pala namin kayo, 'di ba? Kaya talagang yung advokasya nyo ay tuloy-tuloy. At dahil po dyan, tuloy-tuloy po rin namin kayong iimbitahin, no? So muli po, kami po from the Institute for Labor Studies ay nagpapasalamat po ako sa mga kasamahan ho namin dito na nagpunta on-site, at yung mga nasa virtual, nasa Zoom. Alam ko marami sila, yung mga regional offices ho namin sa Dole ay kasalukuyan din ho naka-tune in, no, sa Zoom na to, no. So maraming salamat po, at alam ko po at tayo po ay maraming aral, no, na nakuha dito sa forum na to. At itong forum na to ay hindi ho magtatapos dito. Yung atin hong pagiging marites, marisol ay patuloy, no, magkakaroon pa po ng mga conversation, no, on C190. Simula pa lang po ito ng ating advokasya. Sa akin pong team ILS, Barangay ILS, maraming salamat. At ngayon po, pupunta na po tayo sa pinaka-importanting parte ng ating programa, Lunch is Served po. Thank you po, marami pong salamat.
Thank you, Ma'am Jing. So, everyone, lunch is served. And may we remind again, although kanina po for the participants on-site, nagsascan na po ng QR code. So, sa mga hindi pa po nakakapag-scan, kindly scan this QR code for our customer satisfaction form. And certificate of appearances is available outside sa ating registration. So, same as well sa ating participants sa Zoom, kindly scan the QR code that you can see on the screen for your feedback. Ayan. So your feedback will help us evaluate this event, and this will serve as a reference to improve our further activities. Again, maraming salamat po, and pwede na po tayo pumila for lunch.